Hey guys, what's up? Wearing my flame trooper helmet. It's not a stormtrooper helmet, it's a flame trooper helmet. So get it right, bitches. We're here to talk about Solo, a Star Wars story. That's right, we're not just talking about a main series film that deals with the Skywalkers and all that bullshit. This is a spin-off Solo film, if you will. The one that was previous to this was Rogue One, a Star Wars story. And now we have Solo, which had a troubled production with originally Phil Lord and Chris Miller were the directors, and then they were fired and they brought in Ron Howard. Now, I'm not going to do this whole review with the helmet on because it's going to fuck up the audio, but I thought to celebrate my first live stream Star Wars since The Last Jedi review, I would give you guys a little extra something. So it's a cameo from Dave, the Flame Trooper. I hope you enjoy it. It's all for you guys. There's no difference, Pat. Helmet reveal, yes.
Let the hate flow through you, young Skywalker.
God, you know, some of you are going to be disappointed with this review. That's going to be one of the odd things about this video, is that, so many of you, I know, are excited to hear me just, trash this movie. Let me get the background on there. There we go. We're going to do this all professional. I got my background's all professional now, like the Deadpool video. I'm gonna be live streaming videos a little bit more, but I know a lot of people are crapping on this movie. I listened to World Class Bullshitters live stream last night, and I didn't knock their stream. It was actually pretty decent. I am Solo, yes. So I enjoyed their live stream. I'm also noticing a lot of people who love The Last Jedi are crapping on this movie. I saw, like, there's this guy, Billy Donnelly, he used to work Chronicle, he was hating on this film, and he thought Last Jedi was the best Star Wars film. These are a lot of the critics that resulted in Last Jedi having 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, in the film, and 85 on Metacritic, and they praised The Force Awakens, which has a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. And a lot of these same critics who praised and said that The Last Jedi was one of the best Star Wars films, if not the best Star Wars film, they are hating on this film and saying that it just feels like a product, it's mediocre, it doesn't take any risks. Now, these are people that ignored, or just didn't see, but I think ignored the countless plot holes in The Last Jedi, the bad dialogue, the bad jokes, the bad characterization, the bad editing, the bad flow and pacing. Almost everything about the movie is a clusterfuck, excluding probably the cinematography, which was pretty good, and some of the acting, like Mark Hamill. But for the most part, I think most of us know through a series of videos that The Last Jedi wasn't a very good film. Even just on an entertainment level, it's in many ways the most dull Star Wars movie. So, you know, I'll say this. I didn't hate The Force Awakens when I first saw it. I didn't think it was a very good movie, but I thought it was a fun movie. I thought the pacing was very good, and it had a lot of energy, even if I was annoyed with Rey and stuff like that. And The Last Jedi I just hate. That's probably my, like, up there with Attack of the Clones for me as the worst Star Wars movie. And then, of course, Rogue One I don't think's a very good movie, but I think it has a really, really entertaining third act. I think the final half hour is very entertaining. Really, the action scenes are very well done. And I thought pretty cool, and I thought the movie kind of came together there. And it's a very nice looking film. I still think that's the best looking film out of the new series. So, you know, there's that. So basically, I would give Force Awakens like a 5. Or a 6, maybe. I would give The Last Jedi like a 4 or a 5. I know I originally gave it a 6 in my early review, but I've changed my mind on that. I think it's like a 5. I think it's a really bad movie. At the time, I wasn't sure how much I disliked it, but I've rewatched it since then, and it's horrible. And I would give Rogue One probably like a 6, 6.5, because I think it's the best one and the most entertaining one. Yeah, I'm kind of getting tired of Dishonored Wolf. I don't think he's as good of a reviewer as he thinks he is. And I don't think his points are as well thought out as he thinks they are. He's not a bad reviewer, and his videos are entertaining, but he sees himself as this, like, high-level critic. Like, he goes really in-depth because he can point out nitpicky things like plot holes or certain things that everybody points out. It's kind of like Your Movie Sucks. He makes these, like, half-hour videos of nitpicking. and it doesn't really add that much substance to anything. It's like, oh, you do that observant thing that anyone can do, okay, which is whatever. But I really Dishonored Wolf I do like. I'm not like trying to talk crap on him, but I don't think he's there's a bit of arrogance there. He really thinks he's like the shit, like on Twitter and stuff like that. Although that might just be a character, who knows. So I gotta say, just out of the gate, he doesn't have the talent. I don't know if anyone on YouTube actually has any talent. Like he's above it. Yeah, he does. He acts like he's above it. I mean, he liked Infinity War, so I'll give him that. But when he talks about other, like he was even saying, all these critics are liking Solo, time to shut them down. And then it turned out a bunch of critics didn't like Solo. It's actually getting pretty mediocre reviews when you think about it. It's got like 71% Rotten Tomatoes. Also, the box office isn't very good for Solo. The tracking was way off. The tracking was saying 170 million. The current Friday numbers are 33 million. It looks like it's going to do 90 over the weekend, and over the holiday 4-day weekend, it's going to do 110. So it's easily the lowest opening for the recent Star Wars films. There's a lot of factors to contribute to that. People didn't want a Han Solo movie. There wasn't as much hype for this film. There's probably a lot of people that I think this is a carryover from Last Jedi, and people getting Star Wars fatigue. I think that Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy and Disney and all that are going to have to reconsider the situation they're in with these films, because I think that it's running out of steam and people are getting tired of a Star Wars film. I mean, Last Jedi just came out a few months ago. They really should have pushed this movie back a few months. I really think releasing it in May was a bad idea. I think this film could have had a much better opening weekend later in the year, because it just feels too soon. And they weren't able to build up enough trust after all the bad press that came out about Phil Lord and Chris Miller. There was just too much negative press for this movie. You know, they were saying Alden Ehrenreich couldn't act and all that stuff. How do analysis for films beyond the surface? What do you mean? How do you? You have to see a lot of movies. You have to read books on film. You have to read a lot of literature in general, but you have to read books on film and storytelling. You have to do research, and understand philosophy and themes and theater and literature. Not just film. You have to understand storytelling on a deeper level. You have to understand writing and structure. You have to study editing, and not just YouTube editing. You have to understand film editing, telling a story over 2 hours, which is storytelling. You have to be able to understand why you're subconsciously feeling something and find a way to articulate why your subconscious is feeling a certain emotion about a scene. And you have to figure out a way to articulate that, which is what a filmmaker's doing. A filmmaker feels something abstract in their mind. They have a feeling or a thought, and then they have to figure out a way to visually represent it, just like a writer has to figure out a way to put it down into words, or a painter has to paint it. And your job as a critic or someone who's doing an essay or an analysis, your job is to try to do the same thing, get on that wavelength, like the set designer would have to design the sets, like the costume designer, like the people who are editing the movie, who are collaborating with the director. This would be a good director, obviously. And you have to kind of try to find out why this is there, and why that means this, and why it evokes this emotion. And not just from a sense of camera placement, like, oh, the shot's here to convey this. Oh, if you have the camera lower, it makes someone seem bigger. If it's up higher, they seem small. But just also why they make certain unique decisions, and what was the thought process behind this? What is the meaning of this shot? What's the meaning of this line of dialogue? All sorts of factors, and that takes a lot of studying. You can't just do that if you're clever. To make true astute observations, you can't just be a clever person who thinks that you understand everything when you point out obvious things. Most people on YouTube point out very obvious things about movies. I'm not saying I'm above that, but I at least acknowledge this. A lot of people, I think, get in their heads that they see things other people don't see when they're just pointing out very easy observations. You know, oh, that cut wasn't very good. Oh, that line of dialogue was clearly political based. Oh, this thing here is placed here for this thematic idea, but it's very obvious. It's hard to have a unique perspective, because to have a unique perspective, in a way, you have to be a storyteller and an artist and have a certain level of talent, because you find objective truths in the creative aspect of it, at least objective truths for what the filmmaker wants or what the artist wants, because you understand that. You know, Bill Murray talked about this on Howard Stern. He says that when you have talent and you're on a set, you know what's better. When he was fighting with Harold Ramis on the set of Groundhog Day, because you can compare things and you know what's better, and that's kind of how it is. You see what the best decision was, and you understand how somebody got to that decision. And this isn't easy to do. This takes work. This is like anything else. It's like a muscle you have to train. You can't just be casual about it. You have to really watch stuff you don't want to watch. You have to challenge yourself. You have to challenge your biases and perception of things, and try to find something unique to say, so you're not just saying what everyone's saying. This, I mean, if you go look at Rotten Tomatoes reviews and blurbs, a lot of critics usually say the same thing. It's very difficult to find somebody that makes an observation you haven't heard before. And that's not just film knowledge. That's knowledge in all sorts of things. It's not just knowledge in viewing films and enjoying them emotionally. It's understanding them in an analytical way. And I think a lot of people have never made a movie or created art, like made music or made something, so they don't understand how the process works. So they don't know how somebody gets from a feeling and then gets it to a point of a physical reality. I think a lot of people think that everything's thought out before it's done, but it's work. It takes a lot of work, and a lot of fine tuning. I mean, it's like molding. You have this block, and then you slowly turn it into something, but you don't know what it's going to be when you're first putting it together. That's typically how it works, and I don't think a lot of people understand that. What rating would you give Caravan of Courage, an Ewok Avenger? An Ewok Adventure? I would give it a 10. The CinemaSins generation of film criticism, yes, pointing out very obvious flaws and thinking that makes you the most clever person in the world. That's definitely sure. I say naked tits because the dragon lady from Game of Thrones is the female character in Solo. Yeah, she was a lot less naked in this movie. Very upsetting. I guess this is like, what, the 5th Star Wars prequel now? Is it worth seeing, Daddy? We'll get to that as we go through the film, because I'm going to talk about the entire movie and its plot, even though there's not really much of a plot, to be fair. If we're being... Last Jedi Fallout. Yeah, that's definitely true. I definitely think I said that with my original review. I think it's going to affect the franchise in the long term, in the same way that Batman v Superman affected Justice League down the road, but not Wonder Woman. I think we're seeing the impact of Last Jedi, and we're going to see the impact on Last Jedi, and I don't think they're going to reach that $2 billion Force Awakens made ever again. I don't think they're ever going to get to that point again. What would you give Double Indemnity? 9.5, maybe? A 9? I mean, that's probably my second favorite Billy Wilder film. My favorite, Sunset Boulevard, which is one of my favorite noirs, and I think the script to Double's probably a little bit better, but I think something about the movie about being about Hollywood and that main character William Holden plays, and starting with the main character Dad, there's something about Sunset Boulevard that compels me a little bit more, and it might be because it's about movies. Whereas, Double's more just a classic piece of noir that influenced, like, everything. It's one of the most copied films ever made. But I love both movies, but I'd probably give it a 9. I don't think it's a 10, but I don't give out 10s too often. But it's a great piece of filmmaking, obviously. I mean, The Apartment's great. Some Like It Hot's great. I mean, obviously, he made a lot of great movies. Will they ever reach the Rogue One 1 billion again? They could. Like, Boba Fett could make $1 billion. How go the Mormon Wars? They're very good. You'll see the follow-up to that very soon. I'm trying to watch more movies, but I get lazy sometimes and don't get around to it. Well, that's fine. Maybe it's just not your thing, man. You know, it's a hobby. It's like anything else. You're not better off in life just because you've seen movies. Don't ever fool yourself with that. They can't stop. They have to rely on chink since Americans are getting pissed. Well, the Asian audiences aren't really responding to Star Wars, right? At least in China. Oh, I'm Tumblr cats. Come on, man. Everyone's talked about that. There's nothing left to say. We're here to talk about Solo. We're not here to talk about Thundercats. Or Thundercunts, if you will. Of course I've seen Batteries Not Included. Spielberg produced that. He also produced Space Camp. I think I have a DVD with both of those movies on it. Kate Capshaw's in Space Camp. Really interesting. But I've seen Batteries Not Included many times. Lost Weekend was about Billy Wilder's writing partner relapsing. Oh, really? Yeah, I do believe I have read that, yeah. It's been a while, but I think I have read that in one of the many books on Hollywood I've read. I mean, I've read at least like 50 books at minimum that are about, especially classic Hollywood, because that's where I lack a little bit, so I try to get, a history of that, because it kind of sets up where we're at now. Why did Luke give Leia the dice? Because it's of Han? Han's girlfriend's dice? Well, it was Han's dice, right? He had it first at the beginning. I heard there's a lesbian droid in Solo. I don't remember. I don't think they said she was lesbian. I'm pretty sure they just implied that her and Lando were hooking up, which is weird. There's a line of dialogue where Daenerys says to him, she's like, "How does that work?" And then she goes, "Oh, it works." Like, okay, what is this? His sex doll? Like, I'm really like, where's the vagina port? Where does that work? Is there a hole? I didn't see one. I was legit looking at this droid trying to figure out, like, where's the hole? Does he stick it in a muffler? What's he doing? Does she give him, like, really, really soft hand jobs because she has, like, wire hands? Like, what the fuck? I wasn't annoyed by the droid because I thought it was funny. I don't think they played that seriously, the equality revolution SJW. I thought that character came off like a joke. It was actually very self-aware. It didn't come across like, hey, you should support this droid. Like, it wasn't like... Because the annoying thing about Last Jedi and the politics of Force Awakens is that it's underneath the surface. It's in the subtext with Rey and Kathleen Kennedy walking around saying the Force is female and all that crap. Whereas, in this movie, everybody was laughing at those scenes where she was saying, like, robot rights and all that stuff. So I don't know if I would really say that was annoying SJW stuff, because she was playing an annoying SJW. I thought it was very much a part of the... I mean, in this new timeline, I guess it is their thing. I mean, this movie does change a lot of the mythology of Han Solo. In fact, him being a member of the Empire changes everything, because why the fuck was that never mentioned? Han never brings up working for the Empire in the original trilogy. It's like, wouldn't that be something he would bring up? He was in the Empire for 3 frickin' years? Like, what? Like, that's a big deal. Like, that doesn't make anything. Oh, wow, so they're gonna get an even more boring guy on their next show? I can't wait. I can't wait for Chris Stuckman to be on there and say nothing interesting. That's gonna be exciting. And they're all gonna talk about how great he is of a critic and how awesome he is, even though he's really boring and says nothing. Although Ralph did dog on Jeremy Jahns once and said he just reads Rotten Tomatoes consensus. Yeah, Jeremy Jahns and Chris Stuckman both dislike this movie, yet Chris Stuckman gave Last Jedi like an A. The dice thing feels pointless since they are a force projection. Oh yeah, what happened to the real dice? If that was a force projection, did they say what happens to them? Because Luke handed her to them, they're not real? Are the real dice still on the Falcon? This movie was a blast. He worked for an yeah, but that's not canon anymore in the Legend novels, so it doesn't count. Disney got rid of the EDU, or the expanded universe, EU. Sorry, so all that stuff doesn't matter anymore. Like the Thrawn trilogy and the video game tie-ins and all that. So none of it. So that wouldn't count. So in the new film, he works for the Empire, because we're in a new timeline now that only relates to the movies, no longer the stuff that was in the EU. So we have to think about this stuff differently. Han was already in the Empire in the EU. He was an ace pilot candidate that then he deflected. Yeah, but they took that. The EU doesn't exist anymore. That's what I'm saying. This is a new thing. Also, that was always some of my issue with the EU. Is the EU added stuff that didn't relate at all to the movies? Like, wouldn't Han being a pilot be a factor of the original trilogy? That was the thing where George Lucas was disconnected from the EU. It's kind of like Han and Han. Because I asked that question in one of my Han Solo videos. I said, is it Han or Han? And people told me, well, it's pronounced Han, but some people say Han. And then I found videos of George Lucas saying Han. So it's like, well, if it's Han, then why is George Lucas calling him Han? Is it because George Lucas is a hack and can't remember the names to the characters in his movies? Or the planets or anything like that? There's a video where he goes like, oh, their friend Han. And I'm like, wait a minute. If George Lucas is saying it different, then what the hell does it mean? It's redonkulous. Oh my goodness. I think I'm gonna get off the cam here soon because this helmet's actually getting really hot. Like, this is really warm and it's starting to like, I'm burning up in this thing. And I would like to talk about the movie. Oh my god. Oh. Oh, God. Fuck. I even have the beanie on. That's the funniest part. Wait, does it look like the picture? Ridiculous. Alright, let me get out of this thing, because this thing's pointless. Nothing but Star Wars. Hey, did you see that crazy Star Wars bar? You remember when Bill Murray did that Nick Ocean in the movie? That was pretty awesome. You remember that Darth Vader guy? Did he scare you as much as he scared me? Star Wars. Nothing but Star Wars. Yeah, James Mangold's doing it, yeah. Oh my god, I actually shaved my beard. I know there's nothing wrong with my face. I never said there was something wrong with my face. Did that rumor get spread that there was something wrong with my face? I had a really long beard though. I had a straight long beard. You could see that in the Happy Holidays video. I had one like a Leonardo DiCaprio beard that went down to like my chest. This really isn't a beard right now, it's just stubble. I had a beard that like went down to my, I had one of those like straight vape shop looking beards where I shaved the sides, but I might be growing a full beard again. I had a pretty thick beard like 2 weeks ago, and I just got sick of it because when you get a really thick beard, every time you drink something, it gets in your mustache. Or every time you drink, like, and you get food in your beard and stuff like that, and it's really annoying, so I just shaved. So this is all stubble growing back. Oh, hey, Kevin. Kevin's been wanting to see me, naked for a long time. Oh, yeah, if you go look at the beard from the old bit, yeah, it's a long beard. But the stubble looks more like the Avatar, which I think's really funny, actually. I actually think I look kind of like the Avatar, except my hair is not long like that. I don't have really long hair like that. I have pretty short hair, but that would be funny if I had the same hairdo. It was kind of based off James Van Der Beek, though, so... Yeah, the mustache baggage. It's a struggle, people. I usually have a beard most of the time. I think the longest I had a beard was like a year straight. I usually have one for like 9 months of the year, and then I shave the rest of the year because I just get sick of having one. And I have a goatee. How was the Darth Maul cameo? It was one of the best parts of the movie. Sexy as hell, Pat. I know. I'm just oozing pure sex. I'm not one of those ugly guys that people want you to be on YouTube videos. They think that because you have an avatar, you're like a fat guy. You look like Mundane Matt. And like you have a big belly and you're like, I can't get a girlfriend. Like, that's that stereotype. Don't get me wrong, I hate that shit, because who cares if a guy's fat and lives in a fucking in a basement or what? Like, I don't give a shit. Like, but people like to assume that. They get that a lot. They're like, why are you using an avatar? Are you just some fat piece of shit? It's like, no, I'm not some fat guy. I wouldn't care either if I was. I would like to be fat. Then I wouldn't have to give a shit about my life. I could just embrace eating bad food all the time. I could just drink milkshakes every day. That would be amazing. I wouldn't have to diet and work out. Being fat is awesome. Seriously. Giving up all, like, taking out the effort's like one of the best things you can do in your life. At least when you're young. Don't get me wrong, it probably sucks when you're older, but being in your 20s and fat just seems kind of awesome. I'd love to sit around and just go. I'd love to go to the buffet and know that when they see me walk in, they're like, "Oh no, this guy's gonna clean us up like a shark at a poker game." You do not want the fat guy to walk into a buffet. Have you ever seen a fat guy at a Chinese buffet and you see all the staff running around panicking, like it's the atomic bomb falling on them? It's pretty, I mean, it's scary. They know what's going to happen. I mean, it's like Godzilla just walked in the building and he's going to start knocking buildings over, except it's plates of food. I'm engaged to a woman in Stern, and I'm a neat patriarchy, so hey, life goals. Not as awesome as having a girlfriend. What? I mean, yeah, I guess so. You can be fat and have a girlfriend, though. You know, I was so upset with the lightsaber thing, because at one point it came off like this is going to be the first Star Wars movie that doesn't have a lightsaber in it. I was like, good job. And then at the very end, they had to fucking do it. They just couldn't hold back. Because Rogue One almost did that too. It's like, there's no lightsaber in this movie. Oh, wait, no, we have to have this Darth Vader scene we added. And then I'm watching this movie going like, oh man, they didn't have a lightsaber in this. That's cool. And then the last, like, 5 minutes, they pull that red dick out. And it's like, no! You can't help yourselves with the goddamn lightsaber. The review's starting now, I guess. All right, let's jump in. All right, we're here to talk about Solo, a Star Wars story. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. Was this the first Star Wars film that didn't have the Star Wars title pop out on the screen? I think Rogue One had that, didn't it? Even it didn't have the crawl, but it had the like this one started, and I said, and I leaned over to my girlfriend and I said, "Oh, here we go. Here comes the freaking Star Wars thing." And then it didn't do it. It just kind of like faded into text and then went to like it went to Star Wars crap. I guess. I don't know. I really don't know. Darth Maul was like CGI. I wonder if they're going to do like mocap Darth Maul if they make a sequel, which probably won't happen after the performance of this movie. But I'm not going to lie. I kind of want a sequel. I want to see Darth Maul as a bad guy again. And I'm kind of not against mocap Darth Maul. I thought I would hate something like that. I know the Rogue One had no title crawl, but didn't it have the Star Wars pop out in the screen moment? Because that's not in this movie. It still had the Star Wars thing, right? After a long time ago in a galaxy far... I could be wrong, but I remember that being in Rogue One, but it might just be, you know, the Mandela effect. Like, I'm assuming it's there. I know it didn't have a crawl, but I'm pretty sure it had that, but maybe... Yeah, this was the first time, I think, they didn't do that. So that was weird. Because I was waiting for it. Instead, there was like this text that came after explaining. They basically did do an opening crawl. They just explained what happened to where Han's at, that he's on this planet, this muddy dumpster planet. And I think this is Darth Maul around the time of Phantom Menace. I don't think this is Darth Maul. Oh wait, it can't be because there's the Empire. Wait, what the fuck? So it's Rebels Darth Maul? Oh, I guess so. I guess it's like Star Wars Rebels. I didn't even consider that. Yeah, I was thinking about this during the prequel era, but that doesn't make any sense because the Empire already has taken over. So this would be after the prequels. Huh. Damn, never mind. My bad. Rogue One did have the title card done by iMovie. Go watch the Clone Wars TV series if you want to know how Maul got there. I'm a Star Wars nut. I've heard that show's good. I watched Rebels. So it must be Rebels Darth Maul, yeah. So anyway, the movie starts and Han Solo is on, what's the name of that planet? Corella? And he's with Daenerys Stormborn. And they're making out and having fun. He just got done with the job. It's something turned me off to this movie immediately. That I said, I praised over the last few months. One thing I really liked about this movie in the trailers was I liked how the special effects and cinematography looked by Bradford Young, the guy who shot Arrival and Selma. And I gotta say, I do not like the look of this movie at all. This movie looks like shit. It looks like they took the movie and rubbed mud all over the lens It looks like whatever gels they were using were mud. I mean, oh my god, did it look bad. I mean, don't get me wrong, the special effects look good. Like, the CGI was fine. But man, like, I don't know if this was a Ron Howard thing because he reshot most of the movie. I feel like almost none of the footage in this movie was Lord and Miller stuff, to me. I think almost all of this was Ron Howard. But here's my theory. My theory is that they didn't have a lot of money for the reshoots. And so they kept a lot of, like, special effects shots that were probably done by second unit and then, like, in a computer. And then because they didn't have a lot of money left over, they had to work around that. So because of that, this movie, the sets look really cheap. Like, the sets look really, really fake. They look like sets. They don't feel immersive. And the lighting, while not bad, it's muddy. You can't even see the characters' faces at points. Rogue One and no, they're not. Rogue One's a much better looking movie than this. It's not even close. Rogue One has much better cinematography and lighting as this movie. Yeah, this movie's too dark. I'm not kidding either. You can't make out people's faces. I thought they were just doing that at the beginning because they were on, like, a swamp planet. And I thought, oh, okay, that's just what they're doing here. When they go out to daylight, the movie's going to get brighter. That's not what happens at all. The lighting is way too dark. And I know this is how that guy lights movies. I know this is how Bradford Young... Because I thought Arrival cinematography kind of had issues, too. I thought it was kind of not lit well enough at points. The interior stuff, not exactly the exteriors. And man, holy crap. It might have been a budget issue. I don't know. But yeah, it looks like everything was way too darkly lit. You couldn't see people's faces clearly immediately. And this is throughout the whole film. It's an extremely dark film, and the sets didn't look that good because of the lighting, and it really didn't blend that well with a lot of the special effects. So it made the film did not look like a $200 million movie. I don't even think it really looked like a $100 million movie. It looked kind of cheap, and that's one of the biggest issues with the film is the production of it. It doesn't look that good, and I'm sure that is almost entirely what to do. Oh god, so the movie looks like here. Yeah, Half-Blood Prince looks way better than this. It's a much better looking film than this. Because Half-Blood Prince was a little too darkly lit for the characters, but there was some beautiful cinematography at the same time. I mean, that movie got an Academy Award nomination. There's some scenes where the stuff looks gorgeous in Half-Blood Prince. Like, Hogwarts looks gorgeous, and some of the stuff's really well lit. Like, when they're at the Weasley house, that stuff looks nice. Now, I agree with you, it's a little too dark, but this film, it doesn't have that panache to it that film has. It doesn't have some of that I don't know, melancholy to it, because that seemed to fit the theme of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. This film should be a colorful, bright, fun movie, because that's the tone it has. But the cinematography is in contrast. It's completely jarring with the film that you're watching. You know, like the movie you're watching and the way that the film looks clash with each other. Is it because of the cave scenes? I mean, the whole movie looks this way. It's not just one part of the movie, it's the whole movie. Yeah, my theater was empty too. There was only me and my girlfriend, some guys in their 40s who were like Star Wars fans, and then 3 people down in the front, like near the front. And that was it. Because I sat in the back of the theater, and that was it. There was nobody showed up. It was empty. So I don't know how well this movie's gonna do. The word of mouth might be good. That's very possible, because I do think audiences are going to be surprised by this film. Because, I'll get this out of the way, I don't think this is a bad movie. I really don't. And I know a lot of people wanted me to crap on this film, because I crapped on Last Jedi so much. And I understand that, but for me, this is arguably the best Star Wars film Disney's made so far. I don't think it has as good of a third act as Rogue One does with the action scenes, but this is easily the film with the best characterization out of any 4 of the films that have been made so far. It's got, in my opinion, probably the best individual scenes in it. It sort of lacks energy. It didn't have the energy of, let's say, Force Awakens. I don't love Force Awakens, but J.J. Abrams did give it a lot of energy and quick pacing. There are scenes in that movie where it's kind of non-stop, and there's a lot of camera movement, so it does kind of have a momentum to it, even if you don't like the screenplay and characters. But this is actually a much better film than those other films. That doesn't mean this is a great movie or anything. This is a mediocre film, for sure. But it's a much better film than Last Jedi. Even though Last Jedi has better cinematography and probably sound design, this is a better written film, and the characters are better. And I'd say overall, excluding like Mark Hamill and a few, and Oscar Isaac, the acting's generally more consistent. Even though Emil Clark's kind of mediocre, Paul Bettany doesn't really do much. This is just kind of an okay movie, and it kind of does. I don't think anyone's amazing in this movie, including Donald Glover. I don't think anyone's amazing. What's sad about this movie is that you could see how it could be a great movie. You really could. Like, if they maybe have hired Ron Howard early on and not had this whole fallout with Lord and Miller. I actually think that if they would have reworked some of the script, had a punch-up for the dialogue, I think this could have been the best Star Wars film in a long time. This is an enjoyable movie. The thing I liked most about it is that this reminded me of a movie from the 80s. And I think it's Ron Howard's best film in a decade since Frost Nixon, which was 10 years ago. I think this is his best film in 10 years. Which, once again, isn't high praise. Ron Howard, I know he made Rush, but I even think this is better than Rush. And I really like Rush, but this is more entertaining. I think this is honestly Ron Howard kind of returning to his roots. It's probably on the level of like a Willow, but compared to the other Star Wars films that have come out recently, it is a much better film than those films. It's at least much better. I think Ron Howard, I don't know, I think people might actually like this movie, Alex. I really do. I think it's kind of a pleasant surprise. It's an enjoyable romp. It's kind of it doesn't take itself seriously. It's not pretentious. It's got a very simple story. And the cinematography really holds it down in the lack of scale. But it's, in general, when you watch the movie, you're not sitting there getting mad or anything. You're just kind of watching it like a film you would watch on television. Like, if you watch this on television, it would be a perfectly passable way to pass like 2 hours watching a film. You would not be angry that you sit down and watch this for 2 hours. This film's not offensive. And that's the thing that I liked about it. Is there really wasn't anything offensive about it. And there wasn't anything that really insulted the main Star Wars mythology. There's some things that I question about it. And don't get me wrong, Alden Ehrenreich is not Han Solo. He's not Harrison Ford. Having said that, I don't think he's bad. Everyone keeps saying he's really bad in this movie. And I just don't see it. He's actually a pretty decent actor in this movie. I don't think he gives a bad performance. He kind of reminded me of Eric Stoltz. Like, he really did. It made me think, the issue is like casting. It's like when Eric Stoltz was cast as Marty McFly in Back to the Future, and it should have been Michael J. Fox, and then it was. He's not bad, Alden Ehrenreich. He's really not. He's just not Han Solo. That's the issue. Like, I think he gives a decent performance in this movie. It's just not the right actor to be playing Han Solo. And I think that's why a lot of people are saying he's terrible. But if you can separate him being Han Solo and just look at it as a performance, I don't think it's that bad. I really don't think he's giving a bad performance in this movie. I think he's charismatic. I think he does a good job with the physical side of the role. I think he gives a very charming, winning performance. It's just not Han Solo, and that's an issue. That is a flaw because it's a Han Solo movie. Really, the biggest issue with this film was that it was a Han Solo film. They could have had a better chance of people liking this film more if it wasn't a Han Solo film. If they had just made it a standalone Star Wars movie, and Alden Ehrenreich was playing a new character that was kind of ripped off from Han, but it wasn't Han, and this was a story about him, and you replaced Chewie with another kind of creature, I think people would be pretty positive about this movie. I think so much of the negativity comes from the fact that, unfortunately, it is a prequel, and it is just like the prequels to the Star Wars prequels. They ruined Darth Vader. Um, this ruins kind of how, because this guy doesn't ever feel like Han Solo, and that's jarring. And it's jarring that they try to connect this so much, especially at the end with Han Solo basically help contributing to starting the Rebel Alliance, which just feels too much. Yeah, this could have been its own movie. Like, if this had been its own movie and he was just a new character, I think this would have been, like, I think people would enjoy it more. I think the problem is the whole concept of making a Han Solo film and casting a different actor in such an iconic role. I think that was the biggest miscalculation with the film. Because this is pretty much on par with, like, a mediocre Marvel movie. Like, I'd say this is on par with Ant-Man. The first Ant-Man. I think this is on par with movies like that. I don't think it's a bad movie. This isn't like a terrible film. It didn't make me cringe or anything. There's moments. Don't get me wrong. There's moments of cringe, but it's few. There's few of that. You know, there's not that much. It's really just kind of like a generic space opera, sci-fi movie, space adventure movie. You know, kind of like a lesser Guardians of the Galaxy. But you know, it at least has something going for it. You know, it's not like Rogue One where the whole tone is so sterile. I don't think Ant-Man's a way better movie than this at all. I don't think that at all. I think Ant-Man has all of the same issues this movie has. Like, really lazy screenplay, really lame character, you know, mediocre characters, mediocre dialogue. Ant-Man's got a really good third act in the action scenes, but the first act of Ant-Man just sucks. The second act, when he meets up with Hank Pym and he's with Michael Douglas, that's fun. But Ant-Man is definitely not a great movie or way better than this film. It just has a better special effects and third act sequence. But the whole film it's consistently mediocre, and that's how this film is. Like, Ant-Man feels like a cliche superhero movie that you've seen 1,000 times. And this feels like a cliche space movie that you've seen 1,000 times. Oh, Thor 2 is a much worse movie than this. I don't agree with you at all on that. Thor 2 is a much worse movie than Solo. I think that's ridiculous. Thor 2 is way more boring. Thor 2's like a worse sequel. Thor 2's more insulting. I mean, I can get what you see how they're kind of similar, but Thor 2 is not way better than this movie. I find that notion to be Chewie scenes in this movie are better than anything in Thor 2, except maybe the Loki scenes. Because Chewie's actually he kind of steals the movie. That was the thing. This is like the best Chewie movie in a while. I really like Chewie in this. Like, a lot, actually. I thought this Chewie was funny. I even like how Han meets Chewie. I thought that sequence was really fun. It kind of felt organic. It didn't feel like they pushed it. It's kind of like the first scene where they're in the cockpit together, piloting the ship together. I like how that scene plays out. It doesn't feel like this forced manipulative scene like it could be. Thor 2 is not engaging. Thor was Thor. He was very boring. I actually think that was the worst Thor. I thought he was a lot more interesting in Thor 1 and Thor Ragnarok. I think in Thor 2 he was like nothing. He's just a block of wood. Have you seen Funeral Paradise of Roses? Yes. This is good mediocre to The Last Jedi, guys. This is not a bad movie. I don't think it's a bad movie. I mean, people can have different opinions. I understand that, but I think people have too much emotional attachment connected to this film because it's Han Solo. And they're not just looking at it as its own thing, which I get, because it's called Solo, so you can't really do that. But I didn't have a bad time in the theater watching this movie. Like, this didn't make me upset. Oh, this is a good medicine to The Last Jedi. I'm sorry. I didn't have a bad time watching this movie. And in fact, I'd say the last 20 minutes is kind of awesome. I really, really like the ending of this movie. A lot. The very end of this movie, not the Kessel Run. Oh, yeah, no, Chewie would have shattered Han's spine. I agree. I totally agree with you. Like, Han would have got his back broken immediately getting knocked into the rail. I agree, but, you know, that's always kind of been an issue with Star Wars. I mean, not to like, point that out, but, like, they've never really stuck to that kind of stuff. People have always kind of gotten thrown around and not had their bones broken in Star Wars, so I'll give that a little bit of leeway. It definitely is an issue. I wish they would have figured out a more logical way to do that. Thor 2 didn't have to live up to much Solo, did even the name, the way he got the title to the movie. is half-assed and mediocre. Yeah, it is, for sure. Him getting the name's one of the worst parts of the movie. Yeah, no, Thor is at his best in Infinity War, I agree. I think that's the best use of Thor in Marvel. So anyway, Han Solo meets this, like, Muppet monster creature lady, this worm, and he has this, I can't remember the name of it. It's this really expensive substance, like this energy stuff, and he wants to get off the planet with his girlfriend, Emilia Clarke, with Daenerys. And anyway, he backstabs her, and they decide to get off, and they have to run from these people. And there's actually this really fun car chase at the beginning of the movie. I thought that was really well shot, besides the lighting. But I thought that the pacing and the staging of it was very good. And they go to escape, and then Han gets separated from his woman. What's her name? Grilla, or whatever. So him and her get Quira. So, hyperfuel, yeah. Do you view experimental films the same way you would traditional films? I would view any film differently. I don't know exactly what you mean. Do I look at, like, an art film different from how I would look at, like, a mainstream blockbuster? Probably. Because they would have different goals. I would say. So, anyway, Han gets separated, and I actually thought this was kind of a nice setup. I like the way that the wall gets shut between them, and then Han goes to work for the Empire, and we jump at 3 years later, and his whole goal is to get back, to get his girlfriend back and save her. I don't think that's a bad beginning to the movie. Everyone kept saying the first half hour doesn't keep them... It kind of is queera. Everyone kept saying that the first half hour is messy and the film doesn't really... But I disagree with that. I actually thought the first half hour was fine. Emilia Clarke isn't very good in the movie, but she's not a good actress, so I was expecting that. But it's not a bad dynamic to have Han kind of want this girlfriend, and there's actually something I really like at the end with that. So, so anyway, Han, let me drink some water here. Han is now working for the Empire, and he runs into Beckett, Woody Harrelson's character. Why is fuel a thing in Star Wars now? Because it's a lazy way to come up with conflict in a movie. That's an issue. That's definitely... God, we're running out of fuel in The Last Jedi. One of the dumbest things in the movie. Yeah, the part slug thing. Yeah, that was weird. I mean, it wasn't bad. It was just weird. So Han leaves Planet Mud with his... And, why does Emilia Clarke... Because she's a known name, because of Game of Thrones, because she's a known actress, because she's on, like, the biggest show on television. And that's why. Well, we shouldn't be taking cues from episode 1. I think that's a bad idea. When they're stuck in Tatooine. I think you shouldn't be taking cues from Phantom Menace when you're writing a Star Wars film. I think that's the last film you should be taking cues from. How does Miss Naked still get roles outside of Game of Thrones? Because she's a name, you know? That's all it is. She doesn't have to be a good actress. People know who she is. They think that she has notoriety, even though I don't think she does. I think Peter Dinklage does, because people actually love him. But they don't get that. People love the character of Dany that are fans, even though her character sucks. But the people who are fanboys of her like the character. It's not that they like Emilia Clarke, the actress. That's the issue. They don't realize that the actress isn't the character, and she's not going to be popular outside of that character. Yeah, she's kind of pretty. She's not like a bad-looking woman. She looks nice. But that's all she really has going for her. So, anyway, Han runs into Beckett, Woody Harrelson, who gives a pretty okay performance. Also, they introduced this character early on named, I think, Grillo. He's Grilla. He's like a four-armed alien guy. He's like their Rocket Raccoon. And dude, like, he's awesome. He's easily like the most likable supporting character in this movie. And it's like, what the fuck? Why did you kill this guy off? Like, seriously. He's legit the most likable, he's the most likable, like, side character. Why would you kill him? Like, he's funny. The guy doing the voice is really good. He's a good voice actor. And the design of the character is cool, and he's a pilot that I really liked him. I was upset that they killed that character off. It really kind of... It's like, what is with these movies that they introduce a good new character, and then they just kill him off? What's the freaking point? Why would you do that? It's like killing Akbar. It's like, oh, kill off somebody that could have been an asset to the movie. we don't need cool alien side characters in these. He was cool. He felt like a Guardians of the Galaxy character. He was very cool. Honestly, he was. He was funny, and he had a good design, and I think he could have helped the movie. I think he could have been Beckett's side guy like Chewie was to Han, and he could have been more involved in the final act. Because I feel like they made that mistake where they killed too many characters early on. That could have been... I feel like they killed one character, which was Beckett's girlfriend. But I don't think they should have killed the pilot alien character. I think that was a huge mistake, because he was so likable. I know they killed Akbar. I said that was a mistake. Why would you kill an interesting character that could have made the movie more interesting? Like, Akbar could have made Last Jedi a better movie. That's the problem. These new Star Wars films have no interest in aliens. Like, we finally have the money and the special effects now, where they could have these really cool alien characters in the movies, and it's still just humans for the most part. Or droids. Like, where the fuck are the aliens, man? Like, one of the reasons I was excited for Disney buying Star Wars was I thought we were going to see new aliens and they were going to be in the movies, and there's hardly shit. Porgs? Fucking porgs? That's what we get? I mean, it's bullshit, man. Seriously. That's the thing, it's too many humans. Like, part of the cool thing in Star Wars is aliens. There's none of that, like, Mos Eisley's bar sequence, you know, where they go in and see all these different creatures. Like, we hardly get creatures in these movies. And different designs. That's what pisses me off. Like, I want new creatures and new designs and stuff like that throughout. Even Rogue One, everyone was a human. Why couldn't one of the Rogue One members be an alien? Seriously. Pat, did you think that the first act was a little bit rushed? No, I actually didn't. I thought the first act was pretty fine. I mean, I get what you mean, but it didn't bother me. Yeah, really, where could we be exploring legit aliens now? They kill them off. Yeah, they don't want to explore that stuff. I don't dislike when they kill characters off too, but don't kill off the interesting characters. But they're, you know, they don't kill off the boring, like, yeah, kill Rose. Kill someone like that that's pointless. Don't kill off a character that's, like, fun and entertaining that makes the movie have energy. Like, really? Where the fuck are the aliens? Yeah, but that's the thing in the original trilogy, was they didn't have the money. Back in the day, it would have been really expensive. Also, the Ewoks are in, like, a lot of Return of the Jedi. And I know that's a flaw, but they're still creatures that are part of the environment. But that was mainly because it was more expensive. We have the CGI today to do something like Rocket Raccoon and Groot. You can have those characters in the movie more. And Chewie was one of the main characters in the original trilogy. And he wasn't a human. We need more Chewies. Where's the Chewie of the new group? It's still Chewie. Like, they couldn't come up with something new. Like, the new movies, Chewie's still the fucking side alien character. Like, what the fuck? Like, where's the new Chewie to the group? It's bullshit. Like, Chewie was in the original trilogy. There was still consistently new creatures that would come in and stuff like that. And with modern day special effects, it's just cheaper now. You can afford to put these creatures in these movies, and they don't want to do it. Like, I know everyone bitches about Canto Bight, and I hated Canto Bight too, but it was still cool to see some different creatures. They just didn't do anything with them. Why wasn't Benicio del Toro? Why wasn't DJ, Benicio del Toro's character, an alien? Why does everyone have to be a fucking human? Like, this is where Guardians of the Galaxy really succeeded. Was that they made different creatures just as important. And Drax is an alien, Gamora's an alien, Groot's an alien, Rocket's a talking raccoon. So it makes it feel more unique. These new Star Wars films, they're not doing anything creative. Like, do stuff like Futurama, right? Like, why wasn't the girl that Han was in love with, why wasn't she an alien like Leela, like with one eye? Like, why not make her a creature? Han would have banged an alien chick. Jabba's Palace. Yeah, something like Jabba's Palace. Exactly. I would love that. And, you know, like, and the kids would love that. You would sell merchandise. That would be better for merchandise than boring human characters. Who wants to buy a Rey action figure? But kids love Rocket Raccoon and Groot. It even makes sense from a marketing standpoint. But seriously, Disney, you done fucked up. Anyway. So, Han meets up with Beckett, and he joins his crew. And he also meets... Oh, God, my voice. Got my throat. Sorry, I've been having throat issues. He meets Chewie because they do this Army of Darkness-like scene. Where they're like, hey, throw him in with the creature. So he can, So he can die. Feed him to the creature. And it's fucking Chewie. And I actually thought that was a cool introduction of Chewbacca. Once again, there is a flaw that Han would have got his back broken, but it's still not bad. It's kind of a fun scene, and then you find out Han can speak Wookiee, and he communicates to Chewie. Like, hey, we can get out of here together. Let's work together to get out of here. So that was fun. I thought that was a fun introduction of Chewbacca, and when they get away on the ship together, I thought all that was fine. So, God, my throat's just like fucking ripping apart right now. I don't know what's going on. This is weird. It's never like happened to me during a live stream. Like my throat's like having really trouble right now. It hurts. You should review Army of Darkness. I love Army of Darkness. It's a great movie. One of my favorite movies of all time. Everything you are saying makes perfect sense, but they spent their money on BS SOP they couldn't afford. To keep the best character in Solo, no. I really like the little guy. Yeah, I did. I like the little guy, too. So they go on a job, and there's this train sequence early on that is really fun. I thought this was a much better action scene than any action scene in The Last Jedi, and probably The Force Awakens. I'm not going to say it's better than the third act action in Rogue One. But there's a train heist that I thought was kind of awesome, the staging of it. I thought, yeah, it was just well put together. It was, you know, really, it was showing the difference between Ron Howard and someone like J.J. Abrams, who just does that, the moving camera and the geography, it's not as well established, or like Rian Johnson, who's really not that good of an action director. This film actually, oh yeah, Empire Strikes Back has the best cinematography of any Star Wars film by far. Yeah, the score was fun in this scene. It was just an exciting sequence. They're trying to separate the train carts and train cars, I guess. They're trying to separate them and get the hyperfuel. And while they're doing this, these pirates show up to stop them, and take it from them. And honestly, it was really fun. Like, I thought this was... I will say this is one of the more fun action scenes in a Star Wars movie. Any of them, even. It was very enjoyable, and it felt... it really felt like Star Wars at this point. Like, it actually felt like a Star Wars movie, the energy of it, the fun of it. Beckett's awesome. Beckett, like, spins his guns, and he's like Doc Holliday, and he's, like, shooting. And there's a scene where he's fighting this, the pirate guy that's plot twist later is a girl, but like they have this like battle, and it's kind of awesome. Like it's really well choreographed. And Chewie like almost dies, and Han pulls him in, and then Beckett's girlfriend is over at the bridge. And she gets blown up. And she dies. The guy with the arms dies, even though it sucks he dies. I loved him, but he dies up in the ship, and then Han has to pilot the ship. So basically, we start on them getting on the train, surviving that. Then they have to fight off these pirates. Then we have Han climb up to the ship after the guy gets shot, and then grab the cargo. And they have to hang on to the wires, and they're getting chased, and then they let go of the wires, and everything crashes and everything. It was fun. And I was thinking, you know, man, this movie might be picking up. Like, it's a little boring, a lot of the movie. It's a little dry, but this was fun. No, there was no Force-sensitive characters outside of Darth Maul. Darth Maul was the only character that seemed to be Force-sensitive. So after this scene, everyone dies except for Han, Chewie, and Beckett. And then Beckett's like, kid, you screwed up. You screwed up, you know, and you can go off on your own, you know. I gotta go report to this guy, or I'm gonna get killed if I don't make it right. And Han's like, dude, let me come with you. And it's kind of like these guys starting this relationship. If this had been a better written movie, this stuff could have really worked, the Han Beckett thing. Like, it really could have worked, because Woody Harrelson's so well cast in this role, he just doesn't get much to do. I don't care that there's trains in Star Wars, honestly. That didn't bother me. I didn't find that to be an issue. It was a fun scene, you know? You know, take it for what it is. It's a fun sequence. So, anyway, they go to meet Paul Bentley's character, the Visions in this movie, and it turns out, spoilers, oh, big deal, Emilia Clarke's, Han's girlfriend, Daenerys, is now at this place, at this, like, casino, like, party lounge. I guess it's not a casino, it's like a party, which is much better than the Canto Bight sequence, by the way. And they basically tell them they lost the cargo, and she's trying to help Han out because she's like, hey, we grew up together, even though she doesn't want to tell the guy, like, I want to ride this guy's D. It comes across like she's been having sex with Paul Bentley's character, because he saved her from the Mud Planet. So, anyway, they make a deal that they're going to go to Kessel to collect some of the hyperfuel. So, you know what's getting set up, the Kessel Run. And they need a ship. And not Beckett, but Paul Bentley's character, I can't remember his name right now, he sends, because he was very forgettable and he's barely in the movie, he sends Daenerys with them. That's just not what I'm going to call her. I'm just going to call her Daenerys. He sends... Solo's underperformance sounds like Justice League's economics. It's very similar... I gotta say, it does seem like this movie's gonna have a really rough time. I don't think this is gonna make $300 million. So she goes with them, and guess who they're gonna go meet? She goes, I know a guy with the ship, and you're like, it's gonna be Lando Calrissian. Now, my favorite bit in the movie, there's two bits that I like in this movie from a writing standpoint. And I'll set it up here because it pays off at the end. Now, we always heard that Han got the Falcon in a poker game. Not a poker game. It's not poker, but it's basically poker. Against Lando. So you think this is going to be the sequence where it happens. Because Han's actually sharking. He's actually much better at this game that he's letting on. So he's at the table with Lando, and Donald Glover shows up. Childish Gambino. And he's not bad in the movie. I think he's getting a little overpraised. Because he's just doing a Billy D. Williams impression. Hey, Han. How's it going, Han? You know, he's just doing the voice, but he's not bad. I just don't know if he has screen presence yet. I don't really know if he's much of a film actor. He's only really done television, and he's great on Atlanta, and he was good on Community. But I gotta say, I know this is gonna piss... I think Michael B. Jordan would have been better in this role. I think Michael B. Jordan would have killed in this role. I think he just has more screen presence. He's more of an screen actor. There's a difference between the small screen and the big screen, even when it comes to quality shows. To hold the audience's attention for a blockbuster like this, you have to be a certain kind of actor, and I don't know if Donald Glover is. He's not bad in the movie. Don't get me wrong. He's not bad, but he just doesn't pop off the screen like Billy D. Williams did. And I feel like Michael B. Jordan could have really brought a lot of charisma to this and actually held the screen like he does in Creed. You know, he's an actor who can do that. Even John Boyega, I know a lot of people hate Finn, but I actually think John Boyega is a very good actor, too, and has that ability to hold the screen. I just don't think Finn's a well-written character, but I think Oscar Isaac has that ability. I think that's what's lacking here, is that Donald Glover just doesn't have that ability yet to kind of command the screen, unfortunately. He's just not there yet. Michael B. Jordan, I think, would have killed in this role. I think he's more manly, too. I think Orlando's being kind of manly, and Donald Glover's kind of like a small-framed guy. He's just not that big-looking. And Michael B. Jordan's, like, buff. I mean, remember him in Black Panther? He's like jacked, you know? And he's kind of better-looking, I think. I know it sounds kind of gay, but I think he's much more handsome than Donald Glover. I think he's a much more sexy guy. And women seem to find Michael B. Jordan sexy. And I liked Michael B. Jordan even going back Friday Night Lights. He was terrific. He was on The Wire. And I feel like if he'd been sitting there in the chair as Lando, I think it would immediately popped off the screen. I think this wasn't bad casting, but just like Han, they could have cast a much better actor. Problem is, Donald has blatantly an SJW compared to the talent. I disagree that John Boyega is talentless. I've never agreed with that criticism. I think he's great in Attack the Block. He's one of the best parts of Detroit, which is a really bad movie, but he's good in it. I also think he was good in Pacific Rim 2, which was horribly written. I don't think John Boyega is a bad actor at all. Once again, I think Michael B. Jordan's a much better actor, I'm not saying John, but I don't think John Boyega is a bad actor. I think I've seen him be very good in other movies. Anyway, they play the game, and Han basically wins. But Lando cheated. Now, this was a nice fake out, because you were thinking this was going to be the scene that Han was going to win the Falcon, but it turns out he doesn't win the Falcon here because Lando's cheating. I like that as a piece of writing. I'm sure that was Lawrence Kasdan there. That was nice. The movie needed more stuff like that. That was the kind of stuff I wanted to see in a young Han Solo movie. Was people being scuzzy and pieces of shit and shady. He was very shady in this film, Lando. You couldn't trust him, and that was a good sequence. So I thought that was a good scene. I thought the card game scene was a good sequence all around. No issue with it, really. Once again, the lighting, it's too damn dark. But that's a nice way for Lando and Han to meet. They even do the thing, he calls him Han. And it sets up a great ending, I think. I think the last scene of the movie is actually pretty well done. So he doesn't win the Falcon here, but Lando agrees to go on the mission with them to Kessel if he gets to keep 25%, and they negotiate this with Beckett. So the movie's starting to pick up some momentum here. You have Woody Harrelson playing off Donald Glover, and Han and Daenerys are kind of, they're kind of macking on the ship and trying to get together. And there's kind of like tension and kind of this group thing where we have to team up together to get this dangerous mission together. And you're like, no, this is actually kind of becoming fun. And then they introduce L3, I think is her name, Love, Lando's droid, who's all about equality and equal rights, and she's telling the robots in the fighting cages. It made me think of the first X-Men movie for some reason. Wolverine's fighting in the cages. And she's like, you don't have to do this. Now, once again, I would have found this cringe social justice garbage, but I think that they were playing it up as a joke. I never took it as you were supposed to take that character seriously in those scenes. Because in my screening, at least, there wasn't many people. People were laughing, though. I did not take this as serious stuff. I thought this was very comedic, and I thought in many ways it was almost kind of like a parody of an SJW. Was kind of the way I read it. I didn't take it as like very... And then you get the Clint Howard cameo, like every Ron Howard movie. But anyway, that's a fun sequence. That fun sequence where they meet Lando. Didn't really have a problem with that. So, anyway, they go to Kessel. And they go to get some salt, as they say, the salt mines in Kessel. And they put Han and Chewie as prisoners. And at this point, Chewie's just kind of been stealing the movie, I think. Like, Chewie has some of the funniest scenes in the movie. Chewie, the actor playing him, does a really good job. Ron Howard's brother shows up, freaked Leon from Andy Griffith. Yeah, I thought the SJW robot was actually self-aware. I thought I was going to be cringing at that, but it's actually like when she goes like equality, it's like being with an annoying SJW, like it's funny. It's actually not that, like, it's not cringy like how the stuff Rian Johnson did is. Or like Rose was clearly put in there with an agenda. She doesn't feel like she was put in with an agenda, and I like that. So they're on Kessel, and then there's this whole scene where they go into a control. Really, man, this movie really doesn't have a plot now that I'm going through it. I know I've been talking for like an hour and a half here, but now that I'm thinking about it, this movie really has like no story. Like it's just it doesn't mean it's like I think this film's much better edited and cut than the scenes in Last Jedi, but they're really, yeah, I'm thinking about it. There's no plot to this movie. It's just characters kind of hanging out. That's not a bad thing, though. New Hope doesn't have much of a plot either. It's really not till Empire that they kind of get a plot in a Star Wars movie. So there's something kind of old-fashioned about this movie that I liked. It felt like a movie from the 80s. It didn't really feel like a 2000s movie, and I was charmed by that. I thought that it felt like something that would have come out in like 1985 or something. There was a bit of a Jim Henson tone to some of the scenes in this movie. Yeah, but Taxi Driver has so much deep subtext, and like it's a character study. Taxi Driver is a character study about Travis Bickle. This isn't a character study, Kevin. So when you say it's plotless like Taxi Driver, you're kind of missing that Taxi Driver has depth in that this movie doesn't have. This isn't a deep character study on Han Solo. This doesn't have a bunch of deep subtext. This isn't about a sense of place and the world we live in. and slowly going crazy. I mean, Taxi Driver is very much a depiction of somebody going insane. This film doesn't have anything like that. If it had been a character study and had some kind of depiction of something psychologically or some kind of a deeper theme, I wouldn't have had an issue with that. I don't think movies need a plot to be a great movie. But this isn't, this isn't one of those films. Oh, I'm sorry. Now, L3 was worse than Holdo and Rose. I totally disagree with you. I think that's the no. See, that's what you don't get. L3 throwing the SJW stuff on the surface is funny. People don't take L3 seriously. Everyone like kind of laughs her off, and she's silly. Something being underneath the surface as an implication is much worse than something being a joke on the surface level. Holdo and Rose being subtext is much more insulting because they're trying to manipulate the audience and not be clear with their politics. I will take something that is just outwardly saying it than something that's trying to be manipulative and hide. I don't even think it's close. Holdo is much more insulting in every way and cringe than a robot who's trying to fight for equal droid rights, a droid who's trying to fight for droid rights and saying dialogue like that. Also, she's not as important to the movie. L3 really doesn't serve that much purpose. Holdo is a huge flaw, hold the door, because she doesn't tell she doesn't tell Poe her plan, which is a huge issue with the film. And also Rose does that stupid thing at the end that's a huge issue with the film. L3 really, the biggest thing she contributes to the plot is that she helps them navigate out of the Kessel Run or whatever. And that's actually fine. She's actually useful, unlike Hold the Door and Rose. She actually serves a purpose to the movie. So there's this fun sequence where even though too dark once again, but they're all fighting, Beckett's shooting people, and they get the stuff. And it's actually this really nice little shootout, and he throws the gun to Han gets his gun from Lando. But once again, they don't like wink at you when they do this stuff. It's not like, see, Han got his gun. It's just kind of, it's thrown into a scene. That was well done. And then L3 gets shot after you just met her 2 scenes ago, and they do this, they try to do this dramatic scene with Lando where he's like, no. And I'm like, dude, it's a fucking droid, man. And it's not like R2 where he went on all these adventures with them. Okay? L3 takes the Kessel Run out of Han's hand. It was L3. Not really. If Han hadn't been piloting it, they would have died. It was everybody working together, but it was Han's piloting skills getting away from the Empire that saved them. If Han hadn't been piloting that ship, they would have died. If Lando would have been piloting, they would have died. They didn't use L3 in the navigation until the last second. Most of the entire final scene with Han getting out actually has nothing to do with L3. It's almost all Han's piloting skills, including the thing he does in the racing where he lands and does the stuff like that. So I would disagree with you. I think that's a mischaracterization of the Kessel Run sequence. If, say, L3 had showed up later to explain how bad men are piloting or something. Once again, I think they played her up as a joke. I think they were making fun of SJWs, even though that maybe have not been the intention. That's how it comes across, actually. Yeah, Han just has help. Yeah, he does all of the work. He does all the amazing pilot. They would have got blown up by the Empire for sure. Yeah, she does become one with the Falcon. It's it's kind of like that episode of Futurama where Bender's dating the ship, and then the ship tries to kill them, and it turns into 2001: A Space Odyssey. If L3 had been a more likable character, this would have been a really nice little moment. But it's not. It's whatever. It sucks, but it's whatever. Oh, there's this terrible moment early on I forgot to mention where Han gets his name. So he doesn't have a name, and it's like the Godfather Part 2. It's like Vito Corleone, which is a clever scene, because that's how a lot of immigrants got their names. But Han goes there, and he's like, what's your name? He goes, I don't have anybody. And he goes, oh, you're by yourself? Solo. It's like, oh my god, the cringe. His name Solo actually means solo? Are you fucking kidding me? Nope, I don't think they are that smart. I'm not giving the clock credit for being right twice a day. It's still a broken clock. That was ridiculous when they did the whole solo. It made me think of Zoolander when Ben Stiller looks at Owen Wilson and he goes, Han Solo, and he goes, that's what it made me think of, Han Solo. It's so fucking stupid. It's like, why can't his name just be Han Solo? Why does he have to get it like this? Why can't his name just be Han Solo and we don't know his backstory? Like, why the hell does his name have to have this special meaning? It's like, kiss my ass. Eat my ass out with this rubber spoon, you a-holes. Seriously. I will say, if there was one thing that made me cringe, like, it was that. That was cringeworthy. That was not well done. Not a fan. I can definitely say that I was not a fan of that sequence when Han got his name. For sure. They made fun of SJWs accidentally. I don't think you're supposed to clap when she dies, but that's what happens. I agree, but it still comes across that way. I don't think they were doing it intentionally. I agree. I don't think it was intentional, but that's why it didn't make me hate it like I hated the stuff, the politics in the other scenes. You know, no, it is ridiculous. It's like a sitcom writing at that point. It is true. It's like completely... Corleone represents Vito's hometown, why Solo is just a dumb Imperial joke. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, why didn't they make it something... Like, they could have made it clever, like the Vito Corleone scene in Godfather. Like, I don't have an issue with Solo getting his name somehow. Like, what if Beckett's name was Solo, and he took Beckett's name because he considered him like a father figure? I could deal with that. Like, give it some meaning. Don't make it a joke. It's a fucking punchline. Are you like, if you're gonna make his name a big deal, make it a big deal. Don't pussy out. It's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit, man. So anyway, I forgot the name thing. I'm sorry. I had to bring that up. That scene was hilarious. It's so bad. It's one of the worst things in the movie, if possibly the worst thing. So anyway, they go to do the Kessel Run, and it's supposed to be emotional that L3 died, even though you don't feel a damn thing that she dies. I believe the movie is like The Last Jedi the more you think about it. The less sense it makes. You get from confused to angry at the wasted opportunity. I disagree, because I think The Last Jedi is way messier, and this film's much more simple, and it doesn't try to be subversive and so meta and self-aware and criticizing Star Wars fans. There's not lines of dialogue like "kill the past," where Rian Johnson is telling us to let the past go. This movie never does anything like that. This movie's not meta at all. And it's not commenting on the Star Wars franchise in general. It's just kind of a simple adventure movie that happens to have Han Solo as the main character. There was a lot that was not just insulting on the surface level of Last Jedi being a bad movie. It was insulting with the subtext. This movie doesn't have any subtext. So there's nothing about it to really get that mad about, because they're not saying anything. This movie's about nothing. Where Last Jedi clearly was about something, and it was in the text, and clearly the producers had an agenda. I didn't see any themes in this movie at all. I don't think there was any themes in this film. I don't think there was any commentary, social commentary. I don't think there was any commentary on Star Wars. I didn't see it. You know, I just got out of the movie a few hours ago. I didn't see any of that. And honestly, I'm not saying that's a good thing. I think a movie should have themes and deeper meaning, but there's really nothing. There's really nothing here that is that. Solo just makes more sense too. Like, Solo actually kind of like it's once again, like, you get why Han teams up with Beckett. And then people die, so you get why Beckett does what he does. Like, none of it's, like, as stupid as Rose crashing the ship into Finn because of love. None of it's as dumb as Rey fucking Luke over. None of it's like, I'm gonna give you 3 lessons, and then he does. Like, all those things that don't go anywhere. It doesn't, you know, the Luke's force projection, flying Leia. There's none of that crap, you know? It was a very straightforward movie. They weren't trying to do anything else besides that. I was thinking, since they took a shortcut through the Kessel Run, that doesn't make the Millennium Falcon that special anymore. It definitely took away a bit of the... Sometimes a line of dialogue does have more meaning. Hearing something like, you know, I ran the Kessel Run at 12 parsecs, that gives it more meaning than actually seeing it. This was like seeing the Kobayashi Maru in the Star Trek movie. It's like, we did not need to see this. This took all of the wonder out of them talking about it in Wrath of Khan. Seeing Kirk do it with Spock, it created it. It just takes all of it out, because it can't be what your imagination made it when you heard them talk about it, just like the Kessel Run. I'll give you that. The Kessel Run, it's a fun sequence. But it definitely kind of does. It's not what your imagination made it out to be when you hear Han talk about the Kessel Run. It's just not. And it couldn't be. No director could have made it what you thought in your head. There's no way. That's the problem. The problem was always that parsecs aren't a rate of speed. Oh, I know. But whatever. Yeah, that's true. They had to reconcile that, I guess. Anyway, they do the Kessel Run, and they kind of alluded that it's 14 parsecs, but that Han's rounding off, but he must be, I don't know, he rounds off to 12. Because it was 14, wouldn't it be 15? The subversion for Last Jedi, but I see an excuse for lazy writing and not focusing on the cohesive idea. Yeah, of course. I think this film has lazy writing, but I think it's coherent. I think this is a coherent film. I don't think it's a jumbled mess like Last Jedi, where you're going to all these different characters. You're following Rose and Finn. You're with Poe and Hold the Door. You're with Luke and Rey. You're with Luke and Rey. This film mostly follows Han Solo. He's the main character, and it's a movie about Han Solo throughout the whole film. They don't go to different things. He's almost in every scene, really, and it's about him. So that was the big difference, is there's focus here, which there is not focus in either of the main series films they've made, like Force Awakens. There's too many things they're jumping around doing. This is a Han Solo movie, and it's about Han. That's it. And the people that he meets to become Han Solo, which is why I like the last 20 minutes, and I think it's the best part of the movie. It's actually when the movie feels like it's actually like a decent movie, and this is the film that maybe Ron Howard could have made. And it's got the only stuff in the movie I think is actually interesting and not just generic. So they do the Kessel Run. They're about to get sucked into this like wormhole, I guess, and there's this giant monster creature, and they escape, and then they use some of the hyper fuel to boost out of there, and everyone saves the day. Lando's hurt, so he can't pilot the ship and all that. So they end up going to this planet because the hyperfuel's about to explode, and if they don't get it to this place, it's gonna blow up, and then they're gonna all die. But they get there in time, and they're on like this desert planet. This is senseless, not as senseless as Last Jedi, but pretty senseless, contrived convenience after contrived convenience bounced around between evil white guys and women. Yeah, I just think, like, you seem to have an emotional bias to this. It's really not as forced as you're making it, like the white guys and women, and it's not as contrived as it's just as contrived as a lot of other movies. Like, it's just as contrived as like a Marvel movie might be, or like there's a lot of contrived writing in Return of the Jedi, but that doesn't make it a bad movie. Like, contrivances are only bad if they're, there is contrived writing, like how he meets Chewie. But that's only because we have a lore with Chewie and Han. Like, how he meets him really isn't that unorganic in the movie itself. Or how he meets Beckett and that stuff. It's not that bad. I agree that it's contrived and lazy. But, I that was kind of refreshing, just that it wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't as insulting with the contrived writing like it was with Last Jedi. Last Jedi has so many plot holes and so many contrivances. This film kind of did it in just that generic Hollywood way that a lot of movies do, and that doesn't make it a good or great movie, but it's not like, I don't know, it's not as, because Last Jedi was this praised movie that people said was great, and Rian Johnson got all this credit for being a great writer-director. People aren't praising this movie. This isn't being called a great film. Critics aren't praising this movie, so, I think critics were pretty right about this film. It's got like 71% on Rotten Tomatoes with like a 6.4 average. I think critics were pretty right about this film. I think they were totally wrong about Last Jedi and Force Awakens, but I think critics are being very fair with this movie. And it's kind of a generic film. It is kind of a film that's like a 6 that should have a, that's the kind of movie it is. And that's fine. There's nothing pretentious here. And people trying to act like there's this intellectual stimulation or great thematic depth that's a total mess. People are seeing this movie more for what it is than they did the other films, and that's refreshing because we're not having to explain to people why it's such a terrible movie. People see the flaws with this movie and they're pointing it out. So, we can actually have a reasonable conversation, reasonable discussion instead of like cringing when people try to tell us that we're not fans because we don't get the brilliance of The Last Jedi or Rian Johnson, or that we don't understand how deep the movie is and all that stuff, and Reylo and all that stuff. Like, people aren't saying that about this movie. And it's nice to feel that way. It's nice to feel like people aren't being assholes. Like, that's something. It's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to like have a Star Wars movie not get all this bullshit. If I'm unaccepting of this, maybe it's because it was accepting of Force Awakens, and I was so gypped up by Last Jedi, I can't give an inch. I mean, don't get me wrong, you shouldn't give an inch to mediocrity. You shouldn't like praise mediocrity. I agree with you. But I thought this film was going to be bad. That's all I'm saying. I thought this was going to be a bad movie. It's really not that bad. It's just generic. I thought this was going to be like a really bad movie that was horribly made with the reshooting and like a mess. And it's not a mess, you know. Okay, folks. All right, gang. All right, I saw Solo. It's horrible. L3, terrible. Where was the Blue Apron, folks? Okay, gang. They could have used a doctor. When Lando got shot, my wife's a doctor. That would have helped, folks. It would have made it a better movie. What's with this film? It's really boring. A lot of people are going to be solo in the theater, folks. All right, gang? The gang that they get together in this movie is pretty ridiculous. I liked Woody Harrelson. He was fine. He's a fine actor, Woody Harrelson. And the idea that you would think that I just dislike this movie because it's got the L3 character with a political agenda, that's ridiculous. I don't like this movie because it's not good. It's not good, folks. Okay? I like the original Star Wars, but maybe it's a little overpraised too. I mean, Bull Durham's an overrated movie, folks. So is Empire Strikes Back, gang. All right, the only good movie, Schindler's List. That's the only good movie ever made. I'd say The Pianist is a good movie, but it's made by Roman Polanski, and he's a garbage human being. He's just a garbage human being. So anyway, yeah, but people will call you a Nazi about, like, Last Jedi. They're not going to call you a Nazi about this movie, man. I don't think people are going to be, like, forgiving this film like they did the other films. I really don't. I don't think people are going to be doing that stuff. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think people are going to blindly defend this movie. That's the vibe I'm getting. How's Lando going to be treated in episode... I don't know if Lando's going to be in episode 9. I would like to see Lando. I'd like to see Billy D back. Isn't he sick, though? All this talk of Solo trying to be a space western only makes me want to see Cowboy... Yeah, if this movie was more like Firefly or Cowboy Bebop, that would have been fucking awesome. If this would have been... I was just making fun of Ben Shapiro saying Bull Durham was overrated. It's a movie about a guy who plays minor league baseball, and Susan Sarandon has sex with different players every year, and then it's a love triangle in the vein of like a Philadelphia Story classic Hollywood film with Kevin Costner, Susan Sarandon, and Tim, God, what the fuck? Shawshank Redemption, and holy crap, why can't I think of his name? Jacob's Ladder. Tim Robbins. Yeah, it's a great movie. It's it's a wonderful film. It's like a great rom-com and also really great, it's also like a really great, baseball movie. It really gets the language right. But really, that would have been awesome. I would have loved if this was more like a space western. I think James Mangold's a great choice. I actually wish he would have directed this movie. Because Logan kind of has a western. And he made 3:10 to Yuma, which is an awesome western. And Ben Foster could have been in this as like the bad guy. Holy shit. That'd be amazing. Ben Foster's so good. Can we get Ben Foster in more movies, Hollywood? Will you stop fucking this guy over? He's been doing great work now for like 20 years. I'm sick of this. He was even great on that TV show in like the 90s. That like kid show. Like, get Ben Foster in more movies, people. He's awesome. Yeah, man, God, James Mangold would have made a good Solo film. That's the thing. They should have hired like a guy who could do a western. Like, I don't think a Ron Howard or Lord and Miller. Like, there's so many directors they could have hired that could have given this that tone of Cowboy Bebop or the tone of Firefly. There's a lot of directors out there that I think could have made a western type film, and I think that's what they should have gone for. This should have been like Han Solo's a cowboy. And it's like the Old West in Star Wars. That would have been a cool movie. I'm all for that. I think that would have been really cool. I think because this movie doesn't really feel like a Western at all. And that would have been the right direction. So Kasdan was full of shit. What happened to Lawrence Kasdan, man? His first movie was Body Heat, and that was amazing. It's a great fucking neo-noir. And then he made The Accidental Tourist, The Big Chill, both great. Silverado, a good Western. He wrote Empire. He wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, he was a good filmmaker. He even made this really good movie, Love You to Death, with Kevin Kline. And Grand Canyon, one of the most underrated films of the 90s. Steve Martin gives this great monologue about Sullivan's Travels. I don't know what the hell... It's great. Yeah, I don't know what the hell happened to Lawrence Kasdan. He used to be a great writer and a really good director. Honestly, it is just kind of... Oh yeah, Clint Eastwood would have been a great choice. Yeah, good idea. Clint Eastwood would have been an awesome choice. I'd be up for that. I would. I see. I don't think you can do Keanu. I think he's too old, man. I think you gotta do younger. I could see Adam Driver playing Spike Spiegel. He kind of has that Keanu look, and he's got the height. He's 6'4". He's got the messy hair. Like, imagine if they dyed Adam Driver's hair like kind of green, in the length, and if he just kind of downplayed the role. I know he seems dorky, but I think he could play cool. If you've ever seen him in Patterson, or Joseph Gordon-Levitt maybe could play Spike Spiegel, because he has to be younger. He can't be old. Because Keanu's not a great actor. Let's face it. I mean, he's good as John Wick. But Spike does get, like, sometimes a lot of dialogue. But I think Adam Driver would be the right choice for Spike. Right now, I would cast Adam Driver. Because I don't think Adam Driver's a bad actor. I just think Kylo Ren's a terrible character. I think he's actually a very talented actor. And I think he would do a good job playing that role. He looks the part, at least. He actually looks like Spike. And with the right, like, pitch from the director, I think he could pull it off. How many people were in The Pianist? Why would that guy you imitate have no idea who it is? It's Ben Shapiro. He's a political commentator, lawyer, guy who's really popular conservative. I don't hate Ben Shapiro. I love Ben Shapiro. I'm actually a fan. All parody and stuff means you love something. I actually do his voice because I love him. I'm making fun of him in a wonderful way. I'm a big Ben Shapiro fan. There's some things about him that annoy me, but why would he hate the movie over one guy when there's lots of people in the movie? It was just a joke making fun of him satirically because he says stuff like that. I was just making fun of the way he talks. I wasn't saying that, like, literally. That was just a joke. Some Western directors today or in general? Because the number one would be Howard Hawks. I mean, The Searcher, Rio Bravo. You know, I don't know. He did Stagecoach, right? Yeah, Red River. I mean, Howard Hawks is the, you know, John Ford. Actually, I actually think John Ford might have done The Searchers, now that I think about it. I don't think that was Howard Hawks. Howard Hawks did do Rio Bravo, though. Now I think about it, John Ford probably did. Yeah, but John Ford and Howard Hawks are probably the two best Western directors of all time. Two of the best directors of all time, quite honestly. Howard Hawks is one of the best storytellers of all time. And John Ford was one of the great... I mean, he influenced Kurosawa. Kurosawa's sci-fi. His samurai films were influenced by John Ford's Westerns. As well as The Last Picture Show. But those are probably the best. Clint Eastwood was a great Western director. I mean, honestly, Sergio Leone. All the spaghetti Westerns. Honestly, there's a lot of good Italian directors who did really good Westerns, but I mean, those are the cliche answers if you want to go watch those guys' films. I would go watch all of those movies if you want to go see really great Western movies. Spike needs to be able to bounce around doing all kinds of kicks and shit and then still be believable as a fighter pilot. I think that you could do Spike kind of like MMA. Like, he does mixed martial arts, and then you have him fly. That's the way I would do it. Because some of the stuff they do in the anime, I just don't know if you could totally pull it off visually in a movie, but I think you could have him do, like, leg work and groundwork, I mean. Yeah, you kind of have to go, like, John Ford, Hawks, Leone, and then Clint Eastwood kind of doing the revisionist stuff. Yeah, I would have liked to see Kurosawa make a sci-fi film. Don't get me wrong. What do you think of a live-action cowboy film be about? I would do the first episode as a movie, because the first episode's great, where the guy has the red stuff and he's with the woman and she's pregnant, and then they die at the end, and she says, "See a space cowboy." I think you could just make that a movie. Personally, that was actually a script idea a few years ago, but that's what I would do. I would have it basically be the first episode of the movie dragged out, the first episode of the show dragged to 2 hours. Maybe at the end of the movie, you have them like they go somewhere, and maybe that kind of sets up the second movie. Now, the second movie, I would introduce Faye and have Faye come in, where they have that casino episode, those few episodes where they meet her. I would have a lot of that be the second episode. There's an awesome idea in the second episode. There's a lot you could get plot out of, actually. There's a lot of storytelling in Cowboy Bebop. I don't think there was a lot of plot, but there's a lot of story. And that's where you could get. Now, the first film, I wouldn't do anything with Vicious or with any of that stuff. But the first film, I would just do the first episode with him and Jet being bounty hunters. They go to get this guy who's basically looks like Antonio Banderas. It's him and his pregnant wife. Spike kind of meets her and feels like an emotional attachment to her. And then the second movie is the Faye casino stuff. Remember the awesome ending to that with the case and Spike in the spacesuit? That's what I would do. And I'd make that the second movie. Although it's tempting to do the Jupiter Jazz part 1 and part 2. It's very tempting. But I would do the whole Faye stuff in the second movie, and then maybe end it with the maybe have the casino stuff be the first half of the movie, and then the second half be where Faye's kidnapped by Vicious, and introduce that at the very end of the movie, the church sequence, and have Spike get kicked out of the church, and that's the ending of the movie. And then the second movie, Spike's healed up, and then we meet Einie, and well, Einie could actually be introduced early on. The dog, we meet Ed. Ed comes in the third movie, and they use her. They go find her in the hack in the first part of the movie, and then Spike and them are trying to find out his past. And then the second half of the movie could be him going to find Julia and wrap up things with Vicious. So you'd probably have to cut out the Jupiter Jazz stuff, but you could keep hints of it in the story beats. But that's the problem. Cowboy Bebop's a 26 episode show, so you'd have to cut stuff anyway if you wanted it to be a trilogy. Now, if you're making 4 or 5 movies, you could do more. But I even think the Cowboy Bebop movie's underrated. Or you could just take elements from Cowboy Bebop, and make a movie kind of like. You could make a movie kind of like they did with the film. You could just make a film about Spike and them and meeting a random villain, a bounty, and all that stuff. You could just do that too. There's so much potential there because the characters in the world building so good that you could do a lot with that and just take elements from the show. But that's what I would do if you wanted to be loyal to the show. That's how I would pace it out in a trilogy. So, anyway, they go on this planet in Solo, and this is my favorite stretch of the movie by far. Is like the last 20 minutes. I think it's the best directed. I think it's got a lot of the best writing. I think it's the first time it actually feels like shit's happening. Because a lot of this movie is just kind of like a drag. Like, it's fun, but there's not really much happening. It's just kind of like, there's really only like 2 set pieces, like the train sequence, and then there's the Kessel Run sequence, and that's about it. There's really not much going on in the movie. It kind of lacks excitement. It doesn't really feel like a blockbuster, which is good and bad in a sense. So the final stretch of the movie, you find out that the pirates chasing them are actually good guys, and they're run by this redhead freckled girl, this Ginger. Cowboy Bebop 1988, Once Upon a Time in Mexico 2003. I think you got it. Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking to me. I was like, what? So anyway, the film is so the film at this point, you find out that, which is it's a nice twist. And then, Han's all like, hey, we got people on the ship, and then Lando just flies off. Which I thought was funny. I think you could keep the opening credits with the cow. Oh, you mean the film? I think the live action film, I would keep Tank. I think you could actually do that in the movie, and that would be awesome, especially for people that don't know. That don't know the show. Like, you could honestly start with dun 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 dun, and you could actually do the credits. I would start with like an opening, a stinger, and then go into the credits. That's what I would do with Cowboy Bebop the movie. That's how I would make it. I would actually just do the opening credits. Because I think it's so awesome you can't top it. You might as well just do it. No, I didn't read it. It was my bad. It was my bad. So in this part of the movie, Beckett told Han earlier, don't trust anyone, think everyone's going to betray you, which kind of sets up stuff with Lando and stuff that comes later, you know. And so Han tries to screw over, the score for Cowboy Bebop's incredible. The soundtrack's absolutely amazing. So there's a scene I like a lot where Han's girlfriend tells him, she goes, I know who you are. He goes, I'm an outlaw. She goes, no, you're the good guy. And that's really Han Solo's character. He's the guy who's trying to be the gruff outlaw, but he's really got a heart of gold. He is the good guy. He does do the right thing. And that's in New Hope. So I do like that. I thought that was a good moment. He's a good dude. And then this is, you know, the movie makes this the things, you know, that he's on. So he's starting to kind of become Han Solo. And he wants to just get away with her. So he takes the hyperfuel, and you think that the hyperfuel isn't real. You think they did a fake out. And unfortunately, Beckett leaves, right? Beckett leaves the movie and tells Han, like, hey, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go to Tatooine. And he's talking about Jabba the Hutt. And they keep talking about this guy that Paul Bettany works for, and you find out it's Darth Maul, but it was kind of obvious. But I knew that Darth Maul was in there. Maybe I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't heard that he was in the movie. So I got to say that maybe it would be a plot, like a surprise. So Han goes to take him the hyperfuel and all that, and he goes, man, this stuff looks like the real thing, but somebody told me that you backstabbed me. And he's like, oh my god, Kira or whatever, she betrayed me and all that. It's like, no, and then Beckett comes in, which is obvious, but it's cool. It's cool that Beckett turned on Han. I think that's if their relationship had been better developed, that would have been an awesome twist. So Lando's gone. Lando isn't even in the third act. He's kind of just like a character that comes and goes in the movie. So Beckett screws Han over, and he kind of becomes the bad guy for a little bit here. And then they all get hijacked. The pirates that you find out are actually like trying to take out the Empire. They're actually the early Rebel Alliance, which I didn't mind. I didn't think that was horrible. At least it gave the movie something. It's the inklings of a story there. So I did like the fake not fake thing. I thought that was fun. So you think the fuel's fake, and then Han tells him, he's like, no, you also told me that people are predictable, and you are too. So it turns out that the pirates don't have the fuel, and they have people in disguise, and then they take out all of Paul Bettany's men. And then Han's like, the real stuff actually is that it is real, it isn't fake. And it's like, oh crap, which is fun. That's a fun little piece of the movie. So then Beckett starts shooting everyone in the thing, and you know, that's such better writing than anything in Force Awakens or Last Jedi, now that I'm thinking of it. Just that fake out is really more like a better piece of writing than anything that's in either one of those films. Like, at least it's something that you can cling on to. So that's a fun sequence. Beckett turning on him. Then there's a shootout. It's the lighting seems to get brighter in this part of the movie. It's not as dark. Ron Howard seems to actually kind of be coming alive as a director. Alden Ehrenreich, I think, is kind of the best. He's his better part in this movie, and he starts to feel like he's kind of becoming Han. You know, and that's kind of what the movie's trying to set up. This is when he becomes Han Solo. Is this happening to him? It doesn't have the dramatic weight, but I get what they were trying to do, at least from a writing standpoint, from the screenplay. So Paul Bettany is stuck there with Daenerys and Han, and they start fighting him, and you think you don't know what she's gonna do, but she ends up killing Paul Bettany's character, the bad guy, and Beckett takes Chewie with him with the hyperfuel, and they go to get away. So she's like, hey, you know, we're gonna get money, we can buy our ship, get out of here, Han. So Han goes to go after Beckett, and my favorite scene in the movie probably is this sequence, is when Han stops Beckett with the gun. And he has the gun on Beckett, and yes, I do too. I think it's the best part. This is the best part of the movie, in my opinion, is the scene with Han and Beckett at the end. So Beckett's telling him, like, yo, listen, you know, like, you can't do it. You're not the guy you think you are. You didn't. Of course, you didn't kill him. Of course, she killed him, because that's not, you know, because Han doesn't really kill people. He shoots at like people on the planet, but he's really not like a cold-blooded killer. And then Beckett's all like, you know, now I'm going to teach you another lesson. And you see him go to reach for the gun, and Han just fucking shoots him. Han shoots first. That's the best scene of the movie, easily. It makes Han's character defined more. This is why he became more of the guy he was, because he had to kill a guy that he respected. It turns Han into more of the smuggler outlaw that he needs to be in future movies when he works with Jabba and when we meet him in New Hope. It gives the movie some substance that Han has to kill somebody he doesn't want to kill that he thinks is a friend. Also, it's a nice little Han shoots first thing that is kind of a middle finger to George Lucas special edition thing. And I think that was fine. I think that was a fine... That's the kind of stuff I wanted to see in this movie. A standoff and then Han being a badass and being a man. Because that's the Han Solo I know, is when the door opens in Empire Strikes Back, Han pulls the frickin' gun out and starts shooting at Darth Vader. I agree, but The Room is better than Last Jedi. It's like saying better than... Yeah, but that's what we have to compare this to. We have to compare this to the other Disney Star Wars films. That's the context which we're speaking from, is this is compared to the other films. You know, that's what, you know, because you know, we have to compare it to like these films that are critically acclaimed that are called great movies, and critics are dogging on this film and they didn't dog on those films. Yeah, he does. That's the thing. When the door opens in Empire, it's one of the best block stage scenes in any blockbuster ever. It's so simple. When Lando betrays Han and then the stormtroopers come from the back and Han just looks that face on us like, yeah, I know. I don't think Rogue One's a great movie either. I think Rogue One just has a better third act than this. I think Rogue One's first two acts are pretty messy and sloppy, a lot like this too. I like Rogue One. I like the third act better, but I don't think the characters are boring as shit in Rogue One. I kind of like Cassian when he shoots the guy at the beginning, but Jyn Russo's boring as shit, even though the stuff with their father could have been emotional. All the other characters get no development whatsoever. There's no character development at least Han kind of does have a character arc in this movie, that he kind of becomes this guy and he has to kill his mentor in a way. But I think this is probably on par with Rogue One, except the action scenes aren't as well done, and visually it's not as nice looking. Rogue One's the best looking film out of the new films. It's actually one of the best looking Star Wars films in general. But I don't think the characters were any better than Rogue One than this film, and I don't think the dialogue or the writing was any better in Rogue One either. Excluding maybe the structure leading into New Hope is actually a better idea. Look, on which is better. Rogue One is this. I differ to your expertise because it's a closer fight. Defer, sorry. I thought you said differ. Defer to your expertise. I mean, Rogue One's a better made movie than this film. And it's got a better structure to it, that these people kind of end up together, and her father builds the Death Star and then they all die at the end. You know, Saving Private Ryan. And it's a better looking film, and it works better in that way as a visceral experience. But I think overall this film does have probably better characters. I'd say this has better characters, Rogue One has better direction, and action scenes and special effects and cinematography. But I do think that I probably liked Beckett more than I liked anyone in Rogue One. I probably liked Lando, Beckett, and those characters a little bit more than anyone in Rogue One. But that doesn't make Rogue One bad. I think Rogue One's an okay movie, just like this movie. Yeah, Rogue One does look better. It looks far better. It's a much better looking movie than this. But it's still a very generic movie, Rogue One. But I remember being in the theater when I first... And it has the Darth Vader sequence, and that's an awesome scene. That's cooler than any scene that's in this movie, honestly. Darth Vader killing them. Although I still think that should have been the main group of actors. I think it should have been the Rogue One team that Darth Vader kills. I think that would have been a better scene. No, K2SO was better, for sure. No question, K2SO was better. But he was in the movie more, too. L3's really not in this movie that much. L3's only in this movie for, like, 10 minutes of screen time at best. She's in it a little bit, and then she's at the scene where they go to get the stuff. They go to get the hyperfuel, but she really doesn't have much screen time. So she didn't bother me because she's not in the movie that much. She's hardly honestly in it. She's hardly a character. Lando kind of comes late into the movie, which might have been a mistake. He kind of comes into it really late. Although once again, how he met Lando wasn't as forced as I thought it was going to be. Just like him meeting Chewie or him getting the gun. All that stuff wasn't as forced. Him getting the name was. That was bad. But I probably like Rogue One a little bit better. I'm just saying it's a better comparison. You don't make bad points. This is why I stick around. I've been here a couple months. Well, yeah, but why can't I compare it to Last Jedi and The Force Awakens? I don't get your point. Like, this is a Han Solo movie. Han Solo is in The Force Awakens. It's a prequel with a character that was in The Force Awakens and the original trilogy. Like, Rogue One's more of a standalone movie, excluding Darth Vader and Leia at the end. So, like, it's okay to talk about this in that way. Even Darth Maul's in this. Like, I could talk about this in comparison to the original prequels. Like, it's, you know, they're all connected. It's not like the prequel films are a separate. I mean, they are standalone films, are separate from the main series films. But like, this is a Han Solo film, so it's like, you know, you know, and one of the things I hated the most about Force Awakens is how they killed Han Solo. I hate that scene. But you know, you can't say these standalone films do give me hope because they're better than the main series films, and maybe James Mangold can make a good Boba Fett movie. Maybe, hey, doing something. Maybe James Mangold could make a good Boba Fett movie. Maybe, you know, maybe another director could make a good, sorry, somebody was yelling about laundry, I guess. What if Ron Howard had directed Rogue One? I don't know. I don't think that's his kind of movie. The fuck's fucking laundry? Jesus Christ, calm down. Sorry. Some girlfriend in laundry. I would prefer this to Solo Rogue One, but that's my opinion. Opie Taylor did a great job. I don't think Ron Howard did a bad job. Anyway, I like the scene with the screwing over. I like Beckett. I like Han shooting Beckett. I thought that all worked. She betrays Han and then leaves to go work with Darth Maul. Shows up in this movie with his double-edged lightsaber. And then Han watches her leave. So the ending of the movie sets up that Han lost this girl, and that's why he becomes kind of cold, and why he's the way he is when he comes into. Ron Howard's best film's Apollo 13, but he also did Night Shift, which is great. He did The Paper, which is a great movie from the 90s. I did a video on that film. A Beautiful Mind's ridiculous, but it's a well-made movie. Ron Howard's made a lot of good movies. Gung Ho. He used to make really good comedies, but then he became like I'd say he's kind of a Jon Favreau-esque director. I would compare Ron Howard to Jon Favreau. He was the Jon Favreau of his time. Now, Jon Favreau doing a solo movie, he might have been able to pull this off. That might have been a really good choice before they gave him the television series. Oh, no, The Grinch is Ron Howard's worst. Well, maybe. Angels and Demons is pretty bad, too, like the Da Vinci Code movies. But Ron Howard's a very decent director. He's just not like, he never does stuff that's that great. You got the impression she really didn't want to go work with Maul. Yeah, I got that, too. I felt like they were trying to set it up that Darth Maul's going to be the villain in the next movie because they wanted to make a sequel, although I don't think it's going to happen now. But I think the sequel idea was Han working for Jabba the Hutt and him and Chewie and Lando coming back and them fighting. Splash. Yeah, Splash is a terrific movie. Early Tom Hanks film. Great. It's really the film that made Tom Hanks a star, movie-wise. But I love Splash. Splash is an awesome movie. I totally forgot. Splash is great. Yeah, Ron Howard's a good director. Yeah, Splash was great. Night Shift's great. That was his first. No, his first movie I think was called Grand Theft Auto. Actually, was his first movie. Ron Howard's got one of the greatest careers in Hollywood. I mean, he's on the Andy Griffith Show, then he was in American Graffiti, then Happy Days, then he became a huge director. I mean, his politics suck, but him and Clint Howard's politics are awesome. It's funny that Clint Howard's conservative. I love it. It's like red-pilled. So the ending basically sets up that Han lost this love he had. She betrayed him, and he had to kill his mentor, and that's how he became Han Solo. Then another scene I like is the ending of the movie, because we established that Lando cheated, but Han knows that Lando cheated. So he goes and deactivates the little device that Lando has on his hand to cheat with. And the ending of the movie is Han winning the Falcon. So instead of doing it at that scene earlier, which would have felt more cliche, they save it for the very end of the film. I think Willow's fun. It's not necessarily a great movie. It's kind of really dated and silly, but Willow's a very watchable movie. It's basically The Hobbit. It's George Lucas trying to make The Hobbit again, Lord of the Rings. Yeah, it is. No, it's Lord of the Rings. Yeah, because he gets. Yeah, it's like because George Lucas always wanted to make Lord of the Rings. But it's fine. It's okay. It's not a great film. I think some people love it too much, but it's not bad. What's Ron Howard's politics? He's pretty much like a socialist. That's what his brother said, at least, at some of the stuff he's done. But he doesn't push his politics. Ron Howard doesn't talk about politics, but basically, yeah, he's as hardcore liberal as you can get. Which is fine. You know, the guy doesn't throw it in your face in his movies. His films really aren't. Oh, Ransom's a really fun movie. No, Ron Howard's not Republican. That's Clint Howard, his brother. Ron Howard's very much a Democrat. I actually, yeah, I really, yeah, he made this really good movie, Ransom, that I like a lot. But Ron Howard's a fine director. Rush was a good movie. Frost Nixon. I think Ron Howard's made a lot of good films. Apollo 13 is his only truly great film, and that's the film his whole career built up to. But that is a great film. I mean, it's not the right stuff, but it's still a great movie. So then at the end of the film, Han goes to the poker game, and he beats Lando, and the last scene is him and Chewie and the Falcon. And the way they actually do Chewie getting in the cockpit with Han's really good, becoming his co-pilot, because nobody else can pilot with Chewie. And there's probably the only line in the movie that I thought was funny was Chewie like, "Ooh," and then Han's like, "When did you learn how to pilot?" And then Chewie's like, "Wait, you're 190? You look great." Kind of acknowledging Chewie doesn't age. That was good. That was a good line of dialogue. That was one of the only fun. That was actually, the movie felt lively in that moment. Because the biggest issue I have with this movie, besides the visual and its overall mediocrity, is just kind of the feel of it, the tone. It's just kind of there. It's kind of a sluggish film. It just moves and you don't really feel anything. It lacks energy. It doesn't have that energy of New Hope. That George Lucas approach where he's just going for broke. And it doesn't have the sophistication or polish of something like Empire. And it lacks that. It lacks momentum. It lacks energy. It lacks youthfulness. And I think a lot of that has to do with they had to reshoot the movie, and that's the problem. It just, because people can have different opinions, I think. Yeah, those little things were cute. I just wish this movie had more energy. I wish this movie had like just more action, more fun, more funny dialogue, more like, you're 190, that's great. More visual jokes. More scenes like Beckett betraying Han, more double crossing, more schemes, more Western stuff like that, more people getting shot, more standoffs. That would have been this could have been a really fun movie. Like, it's an enjoyable movie, but it could have been a really fun movie. Like, it didn't have to be a great film, but it could have been a great piece of entertainment if they would have kept the forearm alien throughout the movie. And he was with Beckett at the end and worked with Beckett to screw them over. More character play, more interaction like that. Amelia Clarke, if they would have cast a different actress that came off, that was hard to tell. If she would have been a femme fatale, and it was hard to read who she was, and she was playing Han, and you find out at the end she was just lying to Han the whole movie. That could have been really good stuff. More like, just more sense of adventure, more escapism, more beautiful shots and locations. There's just not a lot of that in this movie. Him even seeing the Falcon for the first time, it's so muddy and like dark. It's not this big exciting moment like it should be. It just needed youthfulness. It needed energy. It needed more punk rock. More Lando playing off Han. More stuff going on. Maybe Lando and Han are fighting over something early on. They're competing with each other to get something, and that's how they run into each other. Not as much time spent on the stuff in the first act. More time spent on stuff in the second act. The second act, where there's a lot of good ideas. Playing to Alden Ehrenreit's strengths a little bit more. All of that. It's just, I just feel like the reshoot seemed to make Rogue One a better movie, and really Tony Gilroy should have just been hired in general. He did a good job. The reshoots for this movie, I think, probably was better than what Lord and Miller were doing, because that sounds like a mess, but also it just kind of made it a bland, sluggish film in general. And I think if they would have had a better vision from the early part of the movie, This could have been a really entertaining film. It was a useless film. We didn't need a Han Solo film, but that doesn't mean it couldn't have been an awesome summer blockbuster. And as it stands now, it's just not an awesome summer blockbuster. It's not one of the. It's not a fun, exciting movie. It's not one you want to go tell everyone to go see. It doesn't have a bunch of awesome action scenes. It has moments. It's a movie of nice moments. And like I said, it's you know, it's on par with Rogue One and better than some of the other stuff Disney's been doing with Star Wars, but it's still just like bad producing. I blame Kathleen Kennedy. This is a poorly produced film. I don't blame Ron Howard. I don't blame Alden Ehrenreich. I don't blame Donald Glover. I don't blame totally Lawrence Kasdan. Kathleen Kennedy did not produce this film well. She got lucky with Rogue One that Tony Gilroy actually had some, you know, background in writing. I mean, he made Michael Clayton. Michael Clayton's a damn good movie, and he was able to work the movie and work with Gareth Edwards and do the Darth Vader scene, so the movie ended on a high note. You know, she had all this goodwill with Force Awakens, and that made $2 billion because there was all this hype for waiting for a Star Wars film. But all that goodwill is gone with Last Jedi. All that goodwill is not there anymore, and it's her fault. She has no plan. She has no vision. She's not like Kevin Feige. It does have some good action scenes. It's true, but there's not that much action in this movie. I wouldn't call this an action film, and I think it probably should have been. It's kind of at its best when there's a lot of things going on at once. When characters are bantering, there's action going on, they're doing a heist. That's kind of when the movie works at its best, is when there's a lot going on in a scene at once. I think she did such a bad job of focusing this. She should have never hired Lord and Miller. She's in over her head. She just doesn't know what she's doing. She doesn't have these standalone films planned out. They needed to rewrite this script a few more times. It's not even that the casting bad. Woody Harrelson's a great idea to put in a Star Wars. That's a great idea. He's just wasted. He could be so much better. Woody Harrelson's a great actor. Let him be great in this. They needed to hire. They needed to do punch up on the script and do rewrites. They needed a younger, more creative director who wanted to do something like this. They needed to make better decisions. And that's the biggest issue here. There's just too many things here that don't work correctly because of the producer not really knowing what this film was before going into it. Now, to be fair, these were George Lucas ideas. George Lucas came up with the idea for Rogue One, and he wanted them to make a young Han Solo movie. These are both pretty lame ideas by George Lucas. They should have come up with better ideas. We didn't need a young Han Solo movie. And we didn't need to see the plans for the Death Star get made. We didn't need all this. We needed something that felt fresh and new and exciting, and directors telling their own unique, idiosyncratic stories in this universe, just like George Lucas told his unique story when he made A New Hope. You need people who have vision and want to challenge things, because you don't have the stuff to pull from like Marvel does, where you can make Ant-Man because there's a backstory. You can make Hulk, you can make Thor, because you have years of comics. The EU, they're just pulling stuff from it like Ben Skywalker and making it Ben Solo. They're just pulling crap that they want instead of adapting some of the good stories. There's really not that much to pull from. Star Wars is a limited universe, so the best idea here would be to let directors make films of different genres. This should have been a Western. Rogue One should have been able to be the war movie that Gareth Edwards wanted it to be. They should be different genres. You should make a romantic comedy Star Wars film. You should make a Star Wars film that's just a bottle film where characters are stuck in like one location. You should do different stuff. Let the Raid director make a Star Wars film. The guy who made the Raid 1 and 2, he made those films on $1 million budget. He give him $50 million and let him make a goddamn Star Wars movie. Stuff like that. You need movies. Do something like The Hateful Eight, where it's all in one location and it's a Star Wars movie. Do something like, there's so many things you could do with Star Wars, because you're just using the aesthetics, basically. You're using the aesthetics. That's it. The thing was, when Disney bought Star Wars, everyone had a hope that they were going to leave the mistakes of Lucas behind and improve on it and actually make proper sequels where we got Luke Skywalker back, we got Han back, we got Leia back, and we loved them. They didn't do that. They killed those characters off and they treated them with no reverence, and it was bullshit. And then they gave us these new characters that suck. We thought, okay, well, maybe we'll get a cool prequel film or a film that's separate. No, we got a fucking Death Star movie because they can't let the Death Star go. The Death Star is in 5 movies. And then they're like, hey, let's do Han Solo. Maybe the Boba Fett movie will be good. Maybe the Obi-Wan movie could be good. But that's it. As it stands now, they can't make one fucking movie worth of shit out of this. It's just new mistakes piled on with the mistakes. You're making prequels again. We don't need fucking Star Wars prequels. Think about the future. What's new? What's exciting? What's a new thing you can introduce that isn't bullshit? How can you they're so attached to the past. Maybe Rian Johnson was right. Kill the past. Let it the fuck go. I don't want the past because Disney doesn't know how to incorporate it correctly or properly. It just sucks. And it drives me nuts. And I'm sick of this. The Thrawn trilogy would have been much better. It's much more interesting than this stuff. They could have done so much cool shit. They could have done Knights of the Old Republic. Hopefully Jon Favreau's TV series is good. At least he's a capable filmmaker. Who knows? Maybe the D&D will make the good thing, even though the last few seasons of Game of Thrones have sucked. I don't like the villains in these new movies. I don't like the stories. I don't like the way they world build and treat the universe. The only thing that I enjoy on any level is occasionally stuff that's a nice little escapism. Maybe some nice movies that are fun, you know, like there's occasionally a joke that's funny or an action scene that's entertaining. That's it. If all I'm going to Star Wars film is to get an occasional good joke or a funny action sequence, that's not enough. That's not enough. That's bullshit. You know, and that's ridiculous. And I'm not gonna embrace and praise mediocrity. I'm not gonna praise them just because this film isn't insulting like the other films was. Fuck Kathleen Kennedy. She doesn't know what she's doing. She just has her popularity because she milked Steven Spielberg and Frank Marshall. She didn't do shit. She just knows how to budget a movie. She has no creative vision. J.J. Abrams would have been a better producer of this franchise. He produced Cloverfield and 10 Cloverfield Lane. He saved the Mission Impossible franchise, goddammit. He's the one that hired Brad Bird. They need to be hiring more creative directors. Edgar Wright should have made a Star Wars film. You know what I mean? They need someone who has something to say or do. They need to take risks. People say Marvel never takes risks, and that's really not true. Occasionally, they will take a risk. Avengers was a risk of a movie that could have bombed. You know, Thor Ragnarok was Guardians of the Galaxy. You know, they tried new things because they knew that you can't just do the same thing all the time. Did they repeat themselves? Yes, but then it led to Infinity War, and then everyone loved it, and it became this huge hit. They're going to kill the Star Wars brand. The merchandise is already selling less and less. And we're getting to a point where the movies aren't making their returns anymore. This is the first film that's not having that $100 million opening weekend. They got lucky at Force Awakens and Rogue One because people love the brand. But now that they're losing the casuals and just keeping the hardcore loyal fans, that's not going to keep this franchise with so much money put behind it. It's not going to keep it alive. Star Wars is going to be dead in less than a decade. Why not hire the guys who write Star Wars Rebels? They seem like they actually get the Star Wars universe. Why don't you let them make the show? Isn't one of those guys the guys who worked on Avatar? Like, get better writers, get better directors. Disney needs to fire Kathleen Kennedy right now. This is leading to because I don't want Star Wars to die. I'm okay with new Star Wars films. I'm okay with Disney milking the franchise, but if you're going to do it, give me entertaining, fun movies that don't insult my intelligence or insult the mythology or how I feel about these characters. Don't ruin Luke Skywalker. Don't ruin Han Solo. Don't ruin the Force. Just make a fucking movie. At least the best thing you could say about Rogue One is that Rogue One, despite the Death Star stuff and them changing it to where the Death Star now has this hole in it because this guy put it in there, and the ending with Leia, for the most part, it's its own movie with its own characters. Sure, are those characters bland and boring? Yeah, but at least it's like a movie, and it's not trying to just say, hey, Star Wars. It is visually, but like, give us some new characters. Give us something like, make the movie. Why couldn't Woody Harrelson be his own lead character? Why couldn't this be about Beckett and the four-armed alien pilot? Why couldn't this just been a heist film about those characters? Why did it have to be about Han Solo? Honestly, I would take the Rebels guys over Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams any day of the week. Why couldn't this just been a film about Beckett and his crew going around? Why did it have to be a Han Solo movie? Couldn't you just make a film called Rebels, a Star Wars story, or like, I don't know, like Grunts or something? Just make a film about this gang who goes around and robs places, and then they die at the end, and that would be a better movie. Woody Harrelson would be a great lead character. Why couldn't Beckett be the lead character in this Western film? Doesn't that sound like an awesome fucking movie? Woody Harrelson going around as a badass guy with this crew, and they do heists and fuck the Empire over, and they're all new characters that aren't associated with it. You know, maybe you have the Darth Maul cameo. Maybe you mention Jabba the Hutt. That's not so bad. But don't make it a freaking Han Solo movie. Guardians of the Galaxy, the mainstream audiences didn't know Star-Lord. They didn't know Rocket and Groot. James Gunn reintroduced them to mainstream audiences and made them fall in love with them. And it was a comic that only comic book fans knew. That's what you gotta do. You know, like how they made Captain America, how the Russos made everyone love Captain America and Chris Evans' performance. You can introduce Beckett and make him an awesome character and make people love him, and then you can make 3 movies with Beckett and his crew. You could make that trilogy that's its own series, because people would love those characters. But they're focusing more on concept. Hey, want to see how the Death Star was, they got the Death Star plans? Hey, want to see what happened to Luke Skywalker and he went missing? Hey, want to see how Han Solo met Lando and Chewie? They're not actually coming up, they're not having the movies be driven by characters, they're having the movies be driven by premise. And where Marvel is strong is Marvel movies do well because of characters, not premise. It's not the concept that tries to sell the movie, it's the people in the movie that the audience engages with. Just like the original Star Wars, people loved Luke, Han, and Leia, so they wanted more stories with Luke, Han, and Leia, but we didn't get those stories with Luke, Han, and Leia. We have to follow fucking Rey, Blandy McBland, bitch. I'm sick of it. I'm not going to give them any leeway on this, but arbitrary rating, I give Solo, a Star Wars story, a 6 out of 10. And that's a kind 6 out of 10. Because I don't think it's a great movie, or even that good of a movie, but it's passable. It's passable, and I'm trying to separate my feelings towards Han Solo and Alden Ehrenreich not being him. It was an okay movie, I didn't hate it, and I'll probably watch it on television, and I'm certainly going to rewatch this piece of shit more than I would rewatch The Last Jedi. The Force Awakens had more energy. That doesn't make it a better movie. This film is slow. It does kind of look like crap. But this still, at the end of the day, I got to give Ron Howard credit because he had to come into a shitty situation. There is a context with this movie that didn't exist with those other films. Because Ron Howard had to come in and reshoot like 80% of this movie, and there's no doubt he didn't get the budget that Lord and Miller would have had, the $150 million. So, to Ron Howard's credit, he made a salvageable product with the worst circumstances possible. So for Ron Howard's work on this alone, having to deal with this terrible situation, and kind of a shitty script, Lord and Miller were right, this script sucks. And with Kathleen Kennedy's bullshit, you know, kudos to you, Ron Howard. You didn't make this like the worst movie ever. But I do think it's going to underperform at the box office, and I do think that Episode 9's got a lot of issues facing it because people are falling out of love with Star Wars. This is what the prequels did. At least the prequels had fucking reverence, and the kids who watched it at the time fell in love with it. Kids aren't going to like these movies. Kids don't like Rey. Kids don't like this crap. These don't feel like kids at least liked the prequels. They liked the monsters and the colors and stuff like that. There's nothing colorful and fun and adventurous about these movies. There's no imagination anywhere. And I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of Star Wars. I thought I was done with Star Wars years ago, and I've had every Star Wars conversation you can have. One of the things I hate talking about the most is Star Wars. And people are like, let's talk about Star Wars for 2 hours. I've had 1,000 Star Wars conversations. There's nothing new to say. It's not as awesome as people think it is. All right? There's much cooler stories and mythologies and franchises out there. Empire Strikes Back, as Red Letter Media say, is the only thing that holds up Star Wars. If they hadn't made one of the greatest sequels of all time, people would not be so addicted to Star Wars. But because of the awesomeness of Darth Vader being Luke's father, and the grayness they added to the Force, and Yoda, and the mythology, and all of that stuff, no, the 107, it's definitely not going to be accurate after Friday. Because Empire ended up being this freakish, beautiful fucking space opera that Beckett worked on the script on before cast and ended up being this amazing film, somehow, and Irvin Kershner, who knew, and the cinematographer of Rocky Horror Picture Show, it looks like a Bergman film. Empire Strikes Back is gorgeous. The acting is better than any of the Star Wars shows. The themes, the depth, the pacing of it. The third act of Empire is perfection. It's one of the best blockbusters ever made. Star Wars 1's like The Wizard of Oz. It's a great fantasy film. It's one of the greatest fantasy escapist films ever made. And then somehow they followed it up with Empire, and that made the whole world more complex. And Return of the Jedi is a good movie with some decent... The throne room sequence is great, but it's got problems. But then because of the stuff they established in Empire, writers were able to do great stuff in the EU, and we were able to get stuff like KOTOR, yes. But that's all because of Empire Strikes Back. That's what kept Star Wars alive, not just as a merchandise and a brand, but as a mythology. But it's not the, be-all, end-all. It's not the ultimate mecca. It's not cinematic nirvana. It's a limited universe. There's only ever the Empire and the Rebels, and every single one of these movies is just stuck on that shit, or the Jedi and lightsabers. You can't come up with anything new, because there is nothing new. Even those things that we're talking about, Battlefront, that's a great game. That's not really a great story. KOTOR, yeah, it's fun to play as a Jedi, and it's a good RPG. None of these are, like, amazing pieces of, like, they don't add anything new. You can't come up with anything new in Star Wars. It's too small. It's too insular. It's too contained. You can't expand on it. It can't be expanded, and Disney's trying to expand it. The Marvel Universe has this comic book. It can expand because you can go into cosmic stuff, and then you can have these characters mixed from different dimensions and that. Star Wars can't, because nobody can come up with new characters and a new planet and new places that are as exciting, as engaging as when we saw AT-ATs or when we first met Yoda. There's nothing that can top that, because there's not these creative geniuses like the people at ILM working on this. There's not writers and people like that work on it. I don't think KOTOR 2 is an extremely original piece of writing or storytelling at all. I completely disagree. I think KOTOR 2 is original in the context of Star Wars. Do I think it's great as a piece of, like, standalone? No. Do I think it was groundbreaking in the same way Star Wars or Empire was? No. I think it's just a really good video game, and we love it as a piece of storytelling and writing in a video game. If that was a movie, I don't think that would be a great film. Part of the joy of the KOTOR series is you're playing a video game, and the game mechanics and the game levels work so well. It's not a 2-hour structured piece of filmmaking. They're completely different things. I don't ever compare video games to movies, because you play a video game. It's so different. Is KOTOR and KOTOR 2 great video games? Yes. They're not movies. Just like New Hope isn't a video game, and it wouldn't be a good video game, even though those Super Nintendo games are fun, those hard games. They're totally different. And the cool thing about the original trilogy was a sense of discovery, of things that were new and exciting, and escapism, and these characters that felt so grounded and human in this world that felt like it was always introducing new things to us. Movies don't do that much anymore. They don't introduce new things to us. That doesn't mean that these actors can't be great in these movies, but they're not here. And that's just what it is. They can, Pat. They just don't know how to. Give me a few months and I can do it. Put me in the game, coach. I'm ready. I agree. I don't think it would make a good movie, but the nuances between Kriya and her ideology was great. Yes, of course. That's the thing. A lot of this stuff is great, and in the medium it's in. Do I think Star Wars aesthetics contribute to a great game? Yes. Do I think it contributes to, like, fun RPGs and stuff like that? Yes. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people like Return of the Jedi more than Empire. I just don't get it, but that's fine. That's fine. Empire to me is, like, just a great film. That's the difference between Empire. Empire's not a great Star Wars film, and New Hope. Return of the Jedi is a great Star Wars movie and a great end to a series. New Hope is just a great film on its own, fantasy movie, and Empire Strikes Back is just a great sci-fi film, tragedy, drama at the center of it. It's just a great film on its own. These aren't great films, they're products. Star Wars is looking into a mirror, and the reflection is looking back at it, and that's all we're getting is a mirrored image of something that existed before. We're not getting anything that we're going to think about or linger with, or anything that's going to inspire us or inspire filmmakers of the future. There's nothing here. No, Empire is a great film when you're looking at it as an adult. But people have different opinions. Empire is kind of disappointing to me. The beginning and the end are also the middle is boring to me. See, I think the whole opening to Return of the Jedi is boring as shit. I think everything at Jabba's place sucks. I used to like it when I was a kid, but now I'm like, God, this is a half hour, And it's one of the most convoluted plans ever. Luke's plan is so stupid. You could cut the... You do not need to have the whole beginning part with Leia. You could just have the opening scene be Luke going there. Like, I'm serious. It's so dragged out. It's... And they have to wrap up the stuff from Empire. And Return of the Jedi shuts down all the interesting, complex stuff that's set up at the end of Empire. Except for the Vader-Luke stuff. They make Leia and Luke, like, very generic. It's a fun movie. But it's the weakest Han Solo in any of the films. Well, besides this movie, obviously. But I'm done. I can't talk more about this. I'm just ranting and getting pissed now. And I was having a good time. I was talking about how this movie pleasantly surprised me. And now I'm bitching because I'm so pissed off about how Disney's treating Star Wars. So, thank you for watching. Tell me in the comments section what you think of this film, of Solo, and the memes and all that. But I give it a 6, maybe a 5.5. I don't know. You can listen to my review and think back on it. I had a good time in the theater, though. I'll say that. I wasn't annoyed. I had a decent time in the theater watching this. But it's fine. It's just too long. It's too long, and you know... People aren't going to watch a 2.5-hour review of this movie, and there's no super chats and all that stuff. I went long enough. That's my Solo review. I might do a video on it. I might do a Why Solo Doesn't Work video, because people like that Doesn't Work series I did, and I might do a formal review where I don't just do spoilers. But thank you for watching. I hope you guys had a fun time. I think this was probably the most interesting live stream since Last Jedi, just because there was a lot to talk about. And you guys are really cool. And I gotta go deal with this laundry. So that's another issue too. I've been kind of procrastinating with that. So I'll play you guys some music, and just thanks for supporting the channel. And I hope you guys like the Kylo show, and there's a lot more of that to come very soon. And I'll see you guys. I'll see you guys Sunday. Actually, I'll be doing Box Office Addict. So this Sunday we'll be talking about Solo and how its opening weekend held up to the tracking, which is not good. Which is not good. And I tried to be optimistic about this movie, and it just didn't happen. Which video game would you adapt to a film? None of them. Maybe KOTOR, but like, I would like something new. I don't want them to just keep remaking stuff that already exists. I'm sorry, man. I love you too, Hayat. I love all you guys, actually. Kylo Show episode 4 is coming out, though. I am going to go get an apartment next week in Columbus, so I might not be able to make a video next week for a few days. And, I also, I got stuff to do. But I'll be here on Sunday for Box Office Addict. That should be fun. And, yeah, may the Force be with you guys. That's awesome. Just because we hate these movies doesn't mean we have to hate Star Wars or what it means to us. So, don't love the film, but don't hate Star Wars because of it, you know?